All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Good afternoon and welcome to our special meeting. It is 5 p.m. I'm going to go ahead and do the roll call, please.
Councilmember McQuay?
Here.
Councilmember Nason?
Here.
Councilmember Tiedemann?
Here.
Vice Mayor Jordan?
Here.
Mayor Gary?
Here. Thank you, Ann. Go ahead and go to line item number 2. The study session will start with item 2.1, and we'll start with a staff report.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. The first item of your two-part study session is your annual study session for the sugar sweetened beverage tax measure 01, passed back in 2016. And tonight you will receive presentations, first from staff, a quick summary to date of expenditures, as well as the projected revenue for the upcoming fiscal year. And then the ordinance explicitly states that the council shall also receive recommendations from 4 different named groups. That includes the SEJC, the Transportation Commission, Park Rec Open Space Commission, and the school district. I will call on our Assistant City Manager, Isabel Duke, to provide details on expenditures to date.
Okay, good evening, council members and Madam Mayor. As part of the sugar sweetened beverage tax study session, council will receive a brief update on fiscal year 2021 tax funded programs, receive input and recommendations for the expenditure of proceeds for the SSB tax, and provide staff with a prioritization of items to be funded with the tax proceed in fiscal year 2022. Last year's council study session was held on May 18, 2020, and at the time, council opted to continue funding the Crossing Guard program, Safe Route to Schools, and Healthy Me Music and Movement programs in schools. Council also decided to wait and see if other needs would emerge due to the COVID-19 pandemic before allocating additional funds. Per the voter-approved ordinance, the sugar sweetened beverage tax is general fund revenue that the City Council aims to apply towards specific purposes related to health and well-being, and approved expenditures are incorporated into the city's annual operating budget. The city estimates receiving $250,000 of sugar sweetened beverage tax proceed in fiscal year 2022. Recommendations have been received from the city's Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Commission, the Social and Economic Justice Commission, the Transportation Commission, and from the Albany Unified School District. A summary table of programs suggestions received as of the writing of this report has been created to assist council in the preliminary prioritization of items. Overlapping interest based on the recommendations received include using the sugar sweetened beverage tax proceeds to continue to fund the contract with All City Management Services for the Crossing Guard program and funding for Healthy Me Music and Movement classes. Further recommendations are also anticipated for presentation to the council this evening. Pending direction provided by the council, staff will work to provide a more detailed cost estimate and programs that are given a higher priority by the council for inclusion in the upcoming operating budget. So with that, I think, Madam Mayor, you can proceed with the study session.
All right, thank you, Assistant City Manager and City Manager. We'll go ahead and ask the council if you have any questions regarding the staff report. Councilmember McQuay.
Thank you. I do have one question just generically. Will we have another opportunity to look at this, or is this kind of our final sort of request to staff and it just then gets put into the budget, or do we look at it separately one more time?
We can make any of that happen as part of the next 2 council meetings in June. You will have a review of the operating budget. So if the council would like to see something summarized based on this evening as a standalone agenda item, we could certainly arrange for that.
Okay. And I do have a question about the Healthy Me program, but perhaps I should wait until that's presented as something. Okay.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Jordan?
Hi, thank you, Mayor. I was curious what and I know this is a revenue goes into the general fund, but notionally what the remaining funds are from last year, because I know that the crossing guard program wasn't in operation for most of the fiscal year. So I presume there's a substantial amount of funds that are left over from the previous year.
Well,
Looking at you as
yeah, okay. So basically, there was some funding allocated for the contract, but as because of the COVID-19 pandemic, the contract only resumed as of March 15th, 2021. Funds it's general fund revenues, so that there's no balance of funds because all the funds that are unused are put back into the operating budget. So technically, when you start on July 1st, 2022, there's an allocation of $250,000 available, but then any remaining funds after that are put back into the operating budget.
Okay, I think that'll be a point of discussion, but thank you for clarifying that.
Yep, that was my question as well. Thanks.
All right, with that said, if there's no other questions, Councilmember Nason, go ahead, please.
Yeah, just one other. I'm curious, you're thinking about, because there was a big dip, presumably COVID related, but if you have any more, any special insight into the significant decrease in revenues.
During the pandemic, we put the responsibility. I see Heather's on too. Heather, please help me with the response to this question in terms of payment to the city.
So along with the state, when COVID first started, the state did basically they allowed businesses to not remit tax. They were required to collect it, but they were not required to remit it for a certain length of time. In conjunction with that, the city did basically the same thing, but ours ended up with the requirement was that the state of emergency would end by the council. So we told businesses that they had until like 45 days after the emergency was lifted by council to remit the tax. So we should be getting the money, but it won't be received this year. It'll be received in the future.
Okay, so it's deferred, not expected to be
Correct.
necessarily lower. Do you have any insight into whether it will be lower or about the same, or?
The last time I checked, it looked like the larger people who were remitting were still remitting. So I'd have to look and see what we've received so far. It is about a month behind because, the returns aren't due until, the next month. And then we have to actually do the journal entry to put it into the system. So it's about a month behind in recording. The information in front of you year to date is for the budget portion is as of May 10th. And so it probably has March in there, but not April, May, or June. So, you have a whole quarter that hasn't been recorded yet.
Okay, and is the plan at the staff level to add that to next year's sugar sweetened beverage tax, or does it just go straight into the general fund if it's not allocated in this round?
So it does go straight into the general fund. So there has never been any actual action by the council to reserve these funds. So they are general fund revenues, and we have historically shown them as, here's what we've gotten and here's how we've spent it and here's the balance. But that balance has just been part of the general fund balance. It is not anything held separately. So we sort of changed how we're presenting it, because it is not a special revenue fund. It is part of the general fund, to say, this is what we get, and here's how we think to allocate, or how, the study session says that we should allocate it. And then it's just worked into the operating budget. And at the end of the year, anything left over just goes back into the general fund balance.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions? All right, we'll go ahead and open it up to public comment, but we'll start with the group. We'll start with Park and Rec, an open space commission.
Okay, thank you. Yes, the Parks Rec Open Space Commission has made several recommendations. And in no particular order, they are education campaign on reducing soda consumption to be incorporated into funded projects. And I would clarify that means into any of the sugar sweetened beverage funded projects, whatever they are, incorporate education campaign on reducing soda consumption. Also create a free or subsidized program to promote the planting of additional street trees, targeting sparsely planted blocks to encourage livability and aesthetics of the community. In addition, there's additional outdoor recreational equipment to expand Ohlone Greenway exercise court. We also recommend directional signage to parks and open space. Another item is walk and roll to shore. It's a specific proposal, an outdoor exercise and mental wellness project that has additional information in our document. Water station at Albany Waterfront Park. And I'm happy to answer questions about any of those. Commissioner Jordan?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chair Martin. Do you have any estimate on what providing a water service to the waterfront would cost?
We did not factor in the economics of that. For that one, the general consensus, I believe, was that the need is high, and that a lot of the low-hanging fruit had already been, watering stations had already been put in public buildings, and I think every public park except for that one. My understanding is that the issue has a lot to do with where the closest water pipes are, and that there would be a lot of trenching and things that are above my pay grade. And so don't really know how much that is, but someone else on the call might.
Yeah, maybe I'll look to Councilmember Nason. She's already thinking about it. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, it's something that we've just desperately wanted for years. At one time, the city did get some water for landscaping coming from on the Buchanan right-of-way from Golden Gate Fields, but that was long ago. In terms of a drinking water line, we looked at it when I was on the Waterfront Commission, and it was prohibitively expensive, several $100,000. And not even entirely clear that we'd be able to get a permit for it. So we didn't pursue it further. It would be great to have, especially to have drinking water and for other purposes, but at that time, at least, it didn't look like a real possibility.
It's kind of an inspiration point situation.
Yeah.
this fund is several $100,000, and it's not meant for recurring things necessarily, although the city is welcome to fund recurring things with it. But that would be one thing to think about, is that, well, maybe this is the time to do that. Yeah. Other questions people had? Yeah. Oh, Mayor, if you would.
No, Councilmember McQuaid has a question.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a bit of a process question. In fact, are we going through and asking the questions on specific items now, or are we going to lump them all together and do them at the end?
We can do it at the end.
Okay,
But
then
if
I'll hold my question then.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you,
Okay.
Commissioner Martin. We'll go ahead to the next group. Let's bring the Transportation Commission.
Good afternoon. So I'm Ken McCroskey, Chair of the Transportation Commission, and we have a list of 4 items. Is anybody else hearing an echo? I'm not sure how to correct.
Councilwoman Nates, I think that's you.
So we have 4 items in our request. The school crossing guard program at $160,000, the Safe Routes to School bike education program at $15,000, and the Healthy Me and music and movement program. I'm not exactly sure how that ended up on our list, but we were lobbied for it at our meeting by the representative of parents, school district. And then number 4, the sidewalk shaving, path repair, and/or wayfinding signage request, which is a bit of a catch-all and relates somewhat to the topics of our meeting that night. As you probably know, the school crossing guards and the Safe Routes to School bike programs are ongoing programs that were shifted to this funding when it came along, and are our primary asks. Both programs are popular and have been very successful. I would note that I don't believe we were lobbied for the Walk and Roll to the Shore program, but that seems in line with our goals as well. Although I don't have the the vote of the whole commission on that one. Can I answer any questions?
All right, thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
We'll go to Social Economic Justice Commission.
There we are. Good evening, Council. So the Social and Economic Justice Commission, which I am the chair of and presenting on behalf of, we looked at a study of the 4 Bay Area cities that have sugar-sweetened beverage taxes, which are Oakland, Berkeley, San Francisco, and Albany, and compared historical spending across the past several years. We also looked at what staff provided to us. I sent a document late in the day today that has some of my notes on this. Apologies for not getting it to you sooner. We looked at some of the recommendations of the other commissions as well. We are coming to you with 2 recommendations only. One is for $15,000 for the laundry program as a direct service, important under COVID for hygiene and healthcare of those most economically disadvantaged, especially those who are houseless or who do not have access to regular laundry or the means to pay for it. And the rest of the $250,000 we recommend unanimously go to rent relief to be dispersed in a manner of your discretion. We discussed that it could be through CARES, through ECHO, through a new program. It could be in the form of helping residents apply for state aid. It could be direct rent relief. We believe that it is a moral and ethical necessity to make this recommendation to you. We consider a budget a moral document, and in this time of COVID crisis, which is not over, and which will only be leading into an ongoing eviction crisis, which will not soon end, that rent relief is of the foremost concern before recreation. We also believe that staying true to the voters on this being a health-oriented tax that is not about physical safety, but is about bodily health, including mental health, and that housing is a form of basic health care. It is a fundamental to health and a basic health issue, as well as mental health, not only physical. For these reasons, these are what we are recommending, despite having looked at previous recommendations that we liked, such as a mobile dental clinic, which is located in multiple other cities, oral health projects like that. These direct relationships of diabetes prevention and oral health and other healthcare wellness clinics. We looked at renewing these recommendations from previous years, but ultimately we decided on $15,000 for the laundry program as a current yet unfunded need, and the rest rent relief. We specifically also, though it did not make it into the recommendations, discussed our opposition to the crossing guard program being under this fund, as it is safety related, not health related, and came from elsewhere. Previously, SCJC did recommend it, but only with reluctance, according to Commissioner Grossman, who was previously involved. And it was last year, and it was largely because we didn't know what would happen with the funds yet, especially as COVID was rolling out. So I will end there and take any questions.
All right, thank you, Chair Dorsey. Then we'll go to the school district.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Frank Wells, Superintendent of Albany Unified School District, and I want to come first giving Thanksgiving. Thank you for the opportunity to have crossing guards for our kids, safety being the highest priority. I want to thank you for funding a music program for our youngest learners. And we have an ask today that you assist us this year with funding what we think are really important swim lessons for our young kids who can't afford swim lessons. And so we have a brief presentation. And so at this time, I'm going to turn it over to our Executive Director of Student Services, Alexia Ritchie.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Alexia Ritchie, and I'm the Executive Director of Student Services for Albany Unified School District. I also oversee the Albany Children's Center, which is our early childhood department. And I'm here today to share my sincere appreciation. I want to thank you all very much for funding the Healthy Me Music and Movement program for the 2020-21 school year, utilizing sugar sweetened beverages tax dollars. This program provides multi-sensory, developmentally appropriate experiences for our youngest students. It's focused on important health topics such as nutrition, the importance of drinking water, fitness, hygiene, and social skills. These health topics are reinforced through singing, dancing, and instrument play in both English and Spanish. You know, the children and teachers love this program, and it was an excellent use of online time during the past year. And the teachers did a great job of translating the content for remote learning. So I do hope that the City of Albany is willing to allocate funds for the Healthy Me Music and Movement program for the 21-22 school year. I want to thank you very much for your continued support. And if there's time, we can share some photographs. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think I'm up next.
Yeah.
To talk a little bit about the developing Albany Swims pilot program. This is a new idea. It's an effort to teach young children to swim. By targeting primary grades with a comprehensive program, AUSD hopes to improve water safety and fitness in children, and children are the most at risk for drowning. City of Albany would sponsor a free set of swim lessons for low socioeconomic level students, those qualifying for free and reduced price lunch. Manager Omaker, are the slides available? There's a little bit more information on the slides, and then I turn it over to the district's chief business official, Jackie Kim, to go over a few of the financials.
Good evening. My name is Jackie Kim, Chief Business Officer for the district. And this is the cost analysis for our swim program. So we have first graders, second and third, because we believe that they are the best age to learn how to swim for the safety. So these numbers are for a free and reduced numbers. We have about 18 to 20% of our students are free and reduced. So you will see about 147 students for first to third. And the cost for the one section is $164. So it will be about $24,100. So this will really help our students from 1 to 3, third graders. At least they can float and they can do a little bit of freestyle for this age. So, and I'm here to take any questions if you have any questions.
Thank you.
We do have the slides that we can put up. Our city clerk's working on that right now.
Okay.
If I may, thank you for the presentations. You mentioned a session is $164. How many actual swim lessons is a session?
So it varies between summer schools and summertime and other fall and spring, usually 6 to 8 swim sessions.
And those are around half an hour each, 40 minutes each?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And okay, yeah, I think that's what I need to know. Thank you very much.
City manager, does she have the slides, or do you want us to go ahead and just do questions and forego them?
I'm sorry, it looks like we're having a little technical difficulty.
Oh, okay, so I'll go ahead and move and have council ask the members questions, and we'll go from there. Hold on, Councilmember Nason. I think Chair Dorsey had something she wanted to add before we go into questions. Go ahead, please.
Please don't call me she, first of all. My pronouns are they and them. Thank you. And yes, I was going to clarify. I was mistaken in leaving out that this was through a racial equity lens, the rents relief. And I apologize for making that mistake. It is always a effort to continue to strive to be actively anti-racist. But it is important to note that rent relief would be through a racial equity lens, building upon SEJC's and the city's racial equity work. Thank you.
All right. Councilmember Nason?
Yeah, I'm a little surprised not to hear the school district supporting the crossing guard program. That's kind of puzzling and takes one aback. Can you address your thoughts about whether the crossing guard program is something the city should continue to fund, and how the school district views that?
Let me try to answer that. I think it's important when it comes to kids and safety of our kids in our community that we all step up and play a role and a part to that. And we really appreciate the partnership that we have with the city in doing that, as we all kind of take on a role to make safety for our city, because the kids who attend our school are just not AUSD kids. They are kids of the city of Albany. And so we love the partnership. and hope to be able to continue it.
Okay,
As
looks
you
like
can see, we now have the slides.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Mayor.
Go ahead with the slides. That'll be fine. And then we'll go back to the questions.
I think we can move through this slide and go on to the Healthy Me program. That's just a photograph. These photographs are from the previous year when we were in person. Executive Director Ritchie mentioned about how well the curriculum translated to our online courses this year and how valuable it was as a part of that curriculum. I'm not sure that we have time to view the video, which is on the next slide. And then we move on to the Albany swims next. As we stated, this was to increase the proportion of Albany residents with basic swimming skills and to do this with an equity lens by particularly targeting underserved groups. You can move to the next slide, please. The disparity in swimming proficiency is well documented to be something that is not equitable at all. And with underserved groups typically feeling much less proficiency in the water and consequently also having a higher frequency of drowning. Next slide, please. And even though we don't have data on this, we do have observational, anecdotal views that this disparity is true in Albany and that we're not seeing the proportion of the underserved groups in the swim lessons that we would like to see. Next slide. And this was just the cost analysis. We put up the cost for serving the free and reduced lunch population in all three first, second, and third grades, just to give the council different options as you put together your package for your general budget. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll go back and open it up for questions. Are there any questions from the council at this time? Councilmember McQuaid?
Yeah, I have several questions, and I would also at some point like to make an additional proposal for use of the tax, but let me do my questions first. Regarding the swim program, am I correct in assuming that these children will simply be blended into the normal swim program? It won't be a separate program, right? That's what I envisioned. Thank you. And I did have a question about Healthy Me, and I can't find where I saw it, but I thought I read that 66 people registered, and then it said something about 20 were there. Is that not true? It's just part of your program, right? Yeah. Okay.
It is, and it's offered to all preschool students, of which we had 56 enrolled this year.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I guess I'll just hang on here.
Go ahead.
To go back now to the walk and roll to the shore.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, I've never heard anything in California referred to as the shore, but that's okay. I'm assuming, I guess my question is, who would we actually be giving money to?
Well, this was a specific proposal by Susan Moffett, who some of you may know from Love the Bulb, and also the nonprofit there, and then also Eugenie Sue, who some of you may know as she's a decorated volunteer or a supporter of music with the Coachella that received an award from the city recently for her efforts with that. And they are proposing this multifaceted, this active finding your way to the shore, to the bulb with some signage that helps people find their way from the center of town, which we thought was an excellent promotion of people had many stories of people they knew that didn't know how to get there well by foot or on bike. And so it's to encourage that. And then once the people are out there, all kinds of music and other functions that Love the Bulb has been putting on a number of things like that. So we were very intrigued by this and excited to send it on to City Council for consideration. And we asked them to come up with something as specific as possible for the City Council to consider. And so they came up with a budget. As far as who to actually write the check to, that would be, I think for a lot of these things, if the City Council decides to spend the money, you then have to look to, okay, who's actually going to receive it?
So the answer to the question is that we're not sure. And that's an okay answer. I just want to be clear what the answer is.
Yeah, they have a budget for project management, I would think would go to them, and then money for musicians and such. And so they, at least one of them's on the call, I know, and might be able to answer how they handle money and dispersing it and what financial structure there would be to make that transparent. And yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. And as far as the crossing guards, I think this is a good use of this funding. And I'm curious if we could give the money to the school district directly and have them manage the program. Is that something that would work for you all?
I found out throughout the years, because crossing guards deal with traffic, that it's a great partnership when you have your local authorities, in this case, APD, help train and support and maybe even supervise. I think that is a more effective means because of the expertise that's in that division. School districts don't have that expertise. We would have to learn to get caught up to speed. And we would never have the training that the APD has around traffic and safety.
Okay, I think it's a discussion we could continue at another time, but perhaps not tonight. Okay, those are all the questions I have at this point.
All right, Vice Mayor Jordan, then Councilmember Tiedemann.
Yeah, I'll pick up on Councilmember McQuaid's last question from talking to the police department. I think what would be helpful in partnership is if there is a sudden vacancy or absence with regard to the crossing guards, what currently has to happen is a police officer has to essentially take that on, which obviously is not ideal necessarily. It's both very expensive and takes them away from their other duties. So I think the interest there is to partner with the school district because you actually have staff that are right at those sites. So if there could be cross training of staff such that the schools could step in when those absences occur, that would be most welcome and help the city out. And I think that's a reasonable request given that we're providing the funding. So I would look forward to discussing that further, and probably Councilmember McQuaid, given her knowledge of the police department, is a good person to work out on that with, but that's what I've heard from the police department about this program. Thanks.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Jordan. Councilmember Tiedemann.
Yeah, one question on the crossing guard issue. I just want, this may be an AUSD and maybe a Nicole question. If we don't fund that program through these funds, does it not get funded? Do we just find another source for it? Does AUSD get left with the bill? Is that an open question? That's up to us to some extent?
Yeah, it would be a policy decision in terms of the overall city operating budget. The current cost to administer the program through the contractor is in the $160,000 range, plus or minus. So if it were not funded with sugar sweetened beverage tax funds, which are general fund, then it would be simply funded with general fund monies. And you would take that allocation towards other potential programs under this program area.
Great, thank you. Yeah, because I think we all want to see that program funded, though we may quibble about whether this money funds it, though that may just be moving digital numbers around, seeing as it's all general fund anyway. And I wanted to ask Corey, I like some of your proposals, and surprising no one, I have some thoughts about rental assistance, but I wanted to see if there were any other, health and wellness social programs or homelessness programs you guys discussed when, making these recommendations.
Sure. Yeah, so we mostly discussed mobile dental clinics, which were proposed by SEJC back in 2019 for disadvantaged youth at $60,000 for an RFP to have 1 to 2 times yearly pediatric dental provider screenings. We discussed mobile medical clinics, starting with the lowest wealth areas, namely UC Village and between San Pablo and the Hill, which was also proposed in 2019 by SEJC. The same amount, $60,000 estimated for an RFP for case management services and mid-level providers of health screenings. We discussed a monthly wellness clinic, also proposed in 2019 by SEJC. Again, an estimated $60,000 RFP, case management. At that time, it was suggested it be at the senior center, but we didn't go into that. We discussed direct cash advances to BIPOC folks, Black, Indigenous, and people of color. We discussed more general COVID relief, and we ended up settling on rent relief. We looked at a little bit at EBT match for Gill Tract Farm, but apparently that is already done, / Gill Tract Farm is already free. But we looked at meal support, which was suggested in 2019. We didn't really discuss that further. Yes, those were our items of discussion.
And the rental relief issue was settled upon just because it seemed the most imminent to the timing?
Yes, we believe that it is the current crisis and that housing comes even before healthcare, because a lack of housing causes further healthcare issues. So that was our reasoning.
Thank you.
Councilmember Nason?
Yeah, I wanted to touch on something that Councilmember Tiedemann asked about. I wanted to fill in that at the time that this fund was originally tapped for the school crossing guard program, the recommendation of the staff was to eliminate the program. And the council decided that we wanted to continue it, but would not use, but that we would look to this fund on the theory that, when it comes to non-automobile transportation, it's kind of hard to untangle the safety and the health, because major block to kids walking or riding their bikes to school, which is one of the best forms of exercise for kids and something that can instill lifelong habits. If there are no crossing guards, parents, we heard from many parents that they would not be comfortable letting their kids get to school that way if the crossing guard program was eliminated. So the idea was, from a health perspective, as well as a safety perspective, it was important to get kids moving and to develop a lifelong habit of walking and biking.
Thank you, Councilmember Nason. Any other questions? All right, Councilmember McQuaid, go ahead.
I was going to say, before you go to public comment, could I suggest another use of the funds so that it's in here? I'd like to recommend that we reserve about $45,000 of this money for mental health services. We'll be receiving a, presentation, I guess, from from the county on mental health services, probably the next several months. And then we'll have a better idea of what they're offering and what we may need to supplement that to get to where we really want to be with mental health. So I think since we don't really know at this moment, but I think it might be a good idea to save some money that we could use for that. And so I was thinking about $45,000 would be good just to hold at this point.
Okay. Thank you. All right, we'll go to public comment. First, I want to thank the chairs, the different departments, AUSD for coming on and sharing your thoughts and your ideas, and we'll open it up for the public comment. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Good evening. I'm just your average old member of the public with public comment here. You know, there's a lot of things I would want to say, but I only get 2 or 3 minutes here, so I'll be quick. You know, the reason for this whole conversation tonight and this discussion is sugar. It's basically sugar and the harm it does to your body, diabetes. And there's a lot of things on this list tonight on how to spend this piggy bank. Yeah, it happens to be in a general fund. Everybody's really lucky because if it was done right and it was in a specific fund and the money was specifically supposed to be used for education, to teach the children, to teach the community on why sugar sweetened beverages have a tax and why it's so harmful for your body. I just think there could be more education in the schools, more education, more drinking fountains, you know, drinking fountains on Solano, push water. You know, education for the schools, put water fountains at the schools, water fountains on the Ohlone Greenway, water fountains at the park. I know everybody's scared of the pandemic and germs on drinking fountains and stuff, but everybody's been vaccinated. So maybe everybody could use drinking fountains again or something, right? Or water filling stations. That's what I meant to say. Same point. So water filling stations, water bottle filling stations, something, education. Just use the money for what it's supposed to be used, because that's why everybody up here, you know, we signed the oath on the Constitution to take these positions to do what's right, because people voted us in here. And we want to use this money. We can't be greedy and selfish. We got to use this money for what's right. Sugar, sweetened, tax, and beverage. Let's use it for education. You know, if we're going to talk about all this stuff, I would say, yeah, let's throw money in for showers so homeless people could take a shower, you know, a shower trailer. You know, or school zones. Let's throw some money on so the city of Albany can finally get school zones in the municipal code book somewhere, so we can finally have school zones legally in the municipal code book, school zones. But this money is supposed to be for education on sugar, sweetened beverages, and diabetes and why it's so bad, all this sugar. So alternatives, maybe we can suggest alternatives for sugar, honey, or something healthier. So thank you. That's all I want to mention. And thank you for your time. Keep up the good work, everybody. But I speak from the heart, and that's where I speak from. I speak from the heart, everybody, and just use the money for education on sugar. And
thank you for your comment. Thank you. Next comment, please.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Hi, my name is Eugenie Shu, and my name was mentioned earlier in regards to the walk and roll to the bulb or to the shore project, and I'm just here to speak on behalf of Susan Moffett, who couldn't be here today, and I did want to just try to answer some of Ms. McQuaid's questions about the budget. So there is a budget that's been already sent in, or a proposal, I should say. And most of the budget is going to hopefully be used on paying the professional musicians, as well as exercise and dance teachers, because the idea is for the whole thing is to have people learn that there is a way to get over to the Albany shoreline without a vehicle, without a motorized vehicle. And so in case people aren't aware, the idea would be to all gather together somewhere central to town, such as the Albany Community Center. And then we would organize sort of a walking school bus. And so people would all travel together, not all in one clump, but, you know, more or less kind of together. We actually even budgeted having, speaking of crossing guards, having crossing guards who are paid to assist with the safe crossing of the streets. We would all, you know, get there. And I believe it's about a mile. It might even be a little bit less than a mile. But I've lived in Albany for 15 years. I only recently discovered the Albany shoreline, the Albany bulb, just in the last couple of years. I really didn't know that much about it. So if I'm someone who's been here for 15 years and I don't know about it, I'm sure there's other people who also don't know about it and also don't know that you can get there from walking or riding your bicycle. So what we propose is to have a very fun afternoon where there are musicians and dance teachers, and the dance that I would envision would be group dance. And of course, this is all post-pandemic, hopefully. So we would have square dancing, we would have Zydeco, we would have West African, and we would have dance teachers who could instruct people. And then we would also have more mellow activity for people who are not as inclined to do something like dance. And so there could be, you know, yoga instruction or some more kind of calmer meditative practices outside. And speaking of mental health, I'm actually a psychologist by profession. And I can say that from doing the Coachella, we've done 4 already, and I've gotten so many comments from people who have said how wonderful it was for their mental health to be able to walk around outside and listen to music, and, you know, after having been crammed indoors for all the time that we were shut in. So I know that it actually has a mental health impact as well, to be outdoors and enjoying the nice weather and hearing live music. So that's another reason why we think that this is appropriate for the sugar sweetened beverage, not just for the physical health aspects, but also for the mental health aspects.
Thank you for your comment. Next, please.
Hi there. My name is Beth Feingold, and I'm co-president of the Berkeley Garden Club. And I'm here because for the past 14 months, the Albany Community Center and the Berkeley Garden Club have collaborated on a very successful Healthy Gardens, Healthy Community speaker series. I hope some of you have been able to stop in and hear some of our speakers. Our topics have ranged from container gardening to fire prevention, indoor plants to vegetable gardening in a small space. We even had a talk by the guy who planted the fruit trees along the Ohlone Greenway in Albany. So our focus is on our local community and the links to community health, mental, physical, dietary, interpersonal engagement, family and community time. And we're really committed as an organization to sustainability and inclusivity, as seems so appropriate and necessary, especially now and in a diverse community. So been a very limited impact on your ACC staff resources. It takes about an hour and a half per month to get it set up and to moderate. And the Garden Club provides the speakers through our program chairperson, and we handle finding them, getting them set up, and handling the fees and managing the hour with your ACC person. And the club welcomes input from the community about future programming. The program's been a great community builder. There have been small dollars and big impact. The online aspect has been very interesting as it's attracted a new demographic. We think that even without the impact of COVID, that a lot of people have really appreciated not having to get in the car, deal with transit time, perhaps find childcare or elder care. And our talks have been very, very well attended. I think it speaks really well to Albany's commitment to the community. The first in this series was funded with Parks and Rec's assistant with soda tax dollars. The second series was funded by the Berkeley Garden Club. So I'm here to ask that you fund it again for the third series to the tune of $1,600. As I said, big impact, not very much money. It's 0.64% of your sweetened beverage tax. We recognize that you have many competing interests and many departments who want to share in the largesse of a soda tax. But the Garden Club is in fact very committed to trying to continue this program with the city of Albany. For those of you who are not aware of it, we meet regularly at the Albany Community Center. When we can meet in person, we rent space from you year round. So if anybody has questions, I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead next.
Yeah, thank you. This is Nick Pilch, Albany resident. Thank you, Mayor and council members. First of all, I want to thank the Social and Economic Justice Commission for having done research into what the other cities around are doing or have done. I think that's an excellent approach to this. Second, I want to say that I think that the staff should continue a specific accounting of this money. I'm not sure how you can know how to spend it if you don't know exactly what's coming in, exactly what has been spent. So I want to put in a plug for that. And third, I want to thank everyone for their having presented their programs. These all seem like worthwhile programs to fund, but of course, the money is finite. So I'm going to assume that you're going to fund the Crossing Guard program. And so beyond that, I want to put in a plug for a couple of small items, one of which I just heard about, which was the garden program at only $1,600. It seems like a no-brainer to fund that. The second one would be free reduced, and I think both of these programs are under $20,000, although I apologize, I didn't write down the numbers. The free and reduced lunch program expansion or covering other students, and the laundry program. Those are small amounts that you could easily cover with this money. And then I want to put in a plug. I want to say that the intent of the monies is to counter sugar sweetened beverage. So it should be spent ideally on programs aimed at health and particularly children's health, I believe. So the Waterfront Water Project actually seems to me to be a perfect nexus with this money. And I didn't know that we didn't have fresh water down there. For some reason, I thought we had a water fountain had been installed as part of the East Bay Regional Park District work. If not, then I think getting an accounting of that would be good, because those programs are only going to cost more and more over time. So I would urge the council to look into that. And let's see, finally, I think rent relief is also very important, but the implementation details and the extent to which that money would have to be spent, I think, unfortunately take it out of your purview, because I think that the state and federal government is going to have to cover those sorts of needs. So those are my comments. And for those who don't know, when I was on the council, I had a great deal to do with the sugar sweetened beverage tax and care a great deal about its revenue as well. So thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comment. Go ahead, please.
Hi, thank you for giving us an opportunity to talk about these important funds. I had a question up at front, and then I'll make my comments. My question is, if the funds that are unspent go into the general fund, can the funds be taken out of the general fund? Is it a two-way thing? If you need more money for something, since they seem to go one direction, I was wondering if they can come back or be transferred. My comment is that I think some of these programs, like the swim lessons and the swim lessons in particular sound like good programs, but if people aren't housed, and because they are evicted because they didn't pay their rent, or they're unhoused because they're unhoused and they need help paying rent, none of these programs matter. Those children aren't going to need swimming lessons. What they need is a place to go at night. So I think that for this year, with what's happening with the eviction rates going up, people under extreme stress, people economically depressed, I think as Corey said, it's a moral and ethical necessity that we do this. And also, as they mentioned, talking about a racial equity lens, I don't know if you're aware of this, but people who, in general, United States, people are experiencing homelessness. 40% of the people experiencing homelessness are African American versus 13% of the general population. So if by helping people who are unhoused, by providing laundry services so they can look for jobs, so they can feel good about themselves, so they can have a place where they can get their laundry done, is through a racial inequity lens, and definitely paying for people's rent. And I am actually surprised that you would consider any of these other things before you would consider that. Maybe there'll be some issues about how that money is spent, as Nick Pilch mentioned, but I don't think that should be a barrier. We have this money. If we can keep people from being on the streets, I think we should absolutely do that. And then in terms of the shore one, which I saw there was a ton of emails going to you, to the council before this, I'm not really clear on how it takes into account people with disabilities. It sounds like there's no bus service to the bulb. So it sounds very much like it's focused on people who do not have disabilities, who can get to the bulb by walking or bicycling, who can then partake in these activities. If there's a disabilities aspect to it, I would appreciate hearing about that, because otherwise it seems to me almost an anti-disability program. And while it sounds pleasant and entertaining, and yes, it's wonderful that people will find the bulb, it's just, if you can't get to the bulb, you're not physically able, that just seems like not a way we should spend our money. But overall, I think we should keep people from being evicted. I think we should let people stay in their homes, and I think we should allow them to have clean laundry. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Are there any more comments?
No.
There's, looks like there's one more.
She already spoke.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Ann. All right. Councilmember Nason and Councilmember McQuaid, get back to the council. Go ahead.
Could we please have Ms. Shu address the disability question, because I think that's very much incorrect.
Okay. Go ahead, Ann.
Hi, thank you for letting me speak again. Yeah, in the proposal that we sent in, we have actually a very specific plan for those who have physical mobility issues. So we would still make it available for people to, we would let them know that there are a few parking spots at the bulb if they need to drive their cars. You know, of course it's limited, but there are handicap parking spots just like there are in any public parking lot. And then in addition to that, we want to actually incorporate, one of our ideas is to do some outreach to Bay Area Outreach and Education Program. And we really hope to get them involved so that they could showcase adaptive bicycles for people with disabilities. And we would also do, you know, kind of drop-offs, and you know, not everybody would be able to drive and park their cars there if there's a limited space, but we would work on helping do some coordination for drop-offs and kind of getting people over to the site if they cannot make it on their own. So yeah, we're aware that if you have a disability and you can't physically be on a bicycle or walk, we don't want to preclude people in that situation from enjoying the activities at the bulb, which could just be listening to music and just being outside, because that's also a good thing for one's mental health. And I should also add just briefly that because there is no water there are no water fountains there, as we were discussing. One of the ideas would be to have water cisterns available so that people can bring their own personal water bottles and rehydrate from the large water cisterns that we would be having to rent.
Thank you so much for your comment and answering that question for us.
You're welcome.
All right, I'll bring it back to the council. Do you have any questions for the advisory bodies before we let them go on to school district? Councilmember McQuaid and then Vice Mayor Jordan.
Thank you. I'm intrigued by this idea of the rent payments. I understand that both the state and the county do have these programs, and I'm just wondering if this is duplicative, if we're running our own program, and how we would administer it. I'm not quite clear on that, and perhaps either Corey could respond, or if necessary, staff could respond.
Sure, no, I can respond. So sure, implementation is a question, and we wanted to leave it open and to mostly deliver this moral statement recommendation to you. But one of the things we discussed was it could look like hiring another CARES person or increasing CARES hours and be about helping with applications to state and county housing rent relief aid. Or it could be working with Echo Housing, who are doing some forms of rent relief. It could be partnering with another nonprofit that is doing some form of rent relief. I don't think that Albany City staff has to invent a distribution mechanism. I think that there are a couple of different possible avenues.
Thank you.
All right, Vice Mayor Jordan.
Yes, this is perhaps a question for staff. I was curious, there was a speaker who mentioned that a speaker series on gardening was held at the community center. That the first set of talks was, I guess, supported financially by funding from last fiscal year's SSB tax. I wasn't aware that was part of the plan last year. Of course, I wasn't on the council last year, so I was just curious to find out if that was in fact the case. I don't recall that being a part of the council's discussion at that time.
Yes, it was part of the expenditure plan for last year. Last year, and it was an overall funding piece of $35,000, but it also included other classes, not just garden talks that the recreation department provided.
Thank you very much, Assistant City Manager.
Yeah. Welcome.
All right, any other questions? All right, thank you again, advisory committees and school district. We'll go ahead and lure them in, and then we'll continue with the council to resolve this at this time. Thank you. All right, Vice Mayor Jordan, we'll go ahead and open this up for discussion so we can provide staff directives. Go ahead, Vice Mayor Jordan.
Thanks. I wasn't sure that was what was happening now.
No,
I figured I better jump into the
go down
silence.
so many. So
Yeah.
now you go ahead, please. Thank
Thanks.
you.
Well, I guess I want to start out maybe asking the members of this council, if we're continuing from the last council, was there an affirmative decision that if funding wasn't spent in alignment with the voters' recommendation, that it should just be spent on whatever it gets spent on in the general fund?
Councilmember Nason? You're mute.
Yeah, I do not recall that having been part of the discussion, although I think that it might have come up before, although it never involved such a large amount as this year with the school crossing guard program not having been needed. So it was never, I don't think it's ever become an issue that we've discussed. This would be a first time to talk about it, I think. I also was on the council when this was passed, and I recall there was a pretty robust discussion actually of whether or not we should follow Berkeley's model on the distribution of the funds or not. And there was a bit of a compromise on that. The Berkeley soda tax is much more closely is tied to largely to diabetes prevention education. But Albany's soda tax is not. We decided to take in recommendations, including recommendations from people with expertise in that field. But we did not but we specifically excluded some of the language that focused the money on that particular objective. So that's why I think everyone was very comfortable or reasonably comfortable, and nearly everybody, directing funding towards the school crossing guards when the partnership kind of collapsed and we lost funding. We were comfortable doing that because we didn't follow the Berkeley model with focusing the money on that particular need.
Vice Mayor Jordan, go ahead.
Thank you for that history. My memory of the last study session on how to spend these funds was that the council chose not to program all the funds because it was in the midst of the pandemic, but did not otherwise say what the funds would be used for. So it was neither an affirmative decision that it should just go into the general fund for all general fund purposes or not. It was sort of a wait and see. So maybe this might be a larger conversation than this, but my interest is in holding faith with the voters that this money not just be thrown into the general fund, in particular because there is in theory some funding coming from the federal level to backfill losses due to the pandemic. And so ultimately maybe we revisit this at that time when that money comes in, pulling money back out to keep this whole, keep faith with the voters. Focusing on today, if I may go forward though with the funds that have been presented, I'm only interested in the education and the active transportation aspects of this. I mean, exercise is one of the best tonics for metabolic disease, of which diabetes is one. So it's not really just a safety nexus. I can point to the Berkeley had a scientific door-to-door survey done, meaning it was a statistical random survey done of under what conditions would people consider biking. And 90% of people there would consider biking if they were provided what they perceived as safe facilities. Only 3% would bike if they were provided what they did not perceive as safe facilities. So clearly, there's a lot of research in public health about, there's even reports called Unhealthy by Design in terms of how our cities are designed to create ill health. We're fortunate to have millions of dollars of infrastructure for active transportation. And so I think encouraging people to actually avail themselves of that is useful. So to get more specific, I certainly support continuing the crossing guard program, the bike safety program, and I support the walk and roll to shore program because I think we have an incredible resource out there. We always have. It's even more incredible now. It's also much more difficult to park out there now. So I think for our local denizens to learn how to get out there without having to hassle with the parking is be quite a service. In regards to that funding, I see that the fiscal sponsor for Love the Bulb is the Earth Island Institute. Love the Bulb has also received grants from the Zellerbach Family Foundation, Philanthropic Ventures Foundation, and the Albany Community Foundation. So I think it has at least a track record of receiving and administering funds. I do appreciate the Social and Economic Justice Commission's research. I am interested in the idea of providing dental care, maybe through lifelong medical. I don't know that a mobile clinic is necessarily the best or most cost-effective way to go with Albany, but I think providing some support in terms of dental care. I think the swim program that the district has come up with is well targeted, given how it's framed. I appreciate the district has done that. And let's see if I've got one more item here. I'll stop talking and turn it over. Well, maybe I'll leave it at that for them. Well, I would say education wise, this is part of personal anecdote, not research, so maybe not indicative, but I learned about sugar and beverages in 4th grade from a film that was brought to our school. And I promptly went home and started throwing out all the food. And my mom said, whoa, wait a minute. Let's eat this stuff that we have. Then we'll like get on a healthy track. So while I appreciate the healthy me and music program, it is for very young children. And I think there's a window in pre-adolescence where kids are kind of becoming more aware of the world and more activated and taking more power on their families. And so I'm kind of intrigued with the idea of having education at that age as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Jordan. Councilmember McQuaid, you're next.
Thank you. I just wanted to comment on one thing that the Vice Mayor mentioned about the federal funding.
Okay.
You know, for smaller cities, it will come in 2 tranches, one this year and one next year. And I'm afraid that we're going to be a little disappointed when we actually receive the funding, that it's not going to be as robust as perhaps we're all hoping. So I think we need to be careful about projecting that into too many places. And the other thing I think we need to keep in mind is this is a general fund tax. So it goes into the general fund and we're pulling it out for these programs. It's not a separate tax that we're putting the change into the general fund. I think we're looking at it backwards. I think it's a general fund tax goes into the general fund and then we pull out what we're going to use. Now, having said that, I totally support the swimming program, as you might imagine. I think that's a great use of funds and well targeted. I support the crossing guards. I do like the Healthy Me music program. It seems like they've done it before. We've heard good things about it, both in person and over Zoom, which is great. Anything that was successful over Zoom is wonderful. I'm still holding out hope that we can put money into mental health. I think that is a critical need that it's gonna probably pop up as we move through a few of our items in the coming year. I really like the idea of the walk and roll to the shore. I'm a little concerned about spending $12,000 on a half-day event. I don't know if we could fund half of it and there could be fundraising for the other half. I'm not quite sure, but I could support it. I could also pull out a little bit of that. So those are kind of my thoughts at this point.
Okay. Councilmember Tiedemann?
Yes, so I would agree with the Vice Mayor and Councilmember McQuaid about the swimming program. Seems well targeted. It seems like a good idea. I would also agree with Councilmember McQuaid about the bulb half-day event. It seems like a big cost for that, and I'd love to see us go to sort of ongoing programs with more tangible benefits. I would very much agree that I'd love to see more of this go towards, mental health services, especially for the most disadvantaged. And I enjoy the direction that the SEJC took us in, and the detailed research they sent us. I do think the rent relief, I think it's a good idea, but I do think it would be duplicative of the work that Alameda County is doing. Is there, we're still in phase 1 of that rent relief getting out the door. So I'm the first one to jump on the boat with saying rent relief is incredibly important right now. And way back when, before I was here, I was doing that. But as far as I know, they've had difficulty getting all that money out the door so far. So before that's all out the door and we, put in another source of funding, I'd like to see that program get more headway. And if there's really issues there that we need to fix by putting more money into it, then that's something we can discuss. But I am not aware of that issue yet. So besides the smaller programs that we've discussed, and I've said I would like to see funded, I'd say the bulk of this money, it seems like a good use of it would be, those health and wellness services, possibly medical clinics, possibly dental care, possibly mental health services, for low income, for homeless residents, as that seems within the intent of this law, of this tax. And then on crossing guards, I think, we all want to see that funded, so I think it should be funded, but it seems like we could do that from other sources, then have a discussion about where we get that money from, which may just be moving numbers around on a screen, but I think that would be a good discussion to have.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Tiedemann. Councilmember Nason.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what I'm hearing here. I agree that the small programs, the swimming and the Healthy Me and the gardening all sound very worthwhile and seem to connect to this source. With regard to safe routes to school, which includes both the crossing guards and the bicycle safety, I think it would probably make sense for us to sit down with the school district, perhaps UC as well, and talk about what each party brings to the table on this. There is kind of an acute issue coming up with the planning that UC and the school district are both doing with respect to Jackson Street, that is going to be very important to impacting people's decision whether to allow their children to walk or ride a bicycle to that school. And all of these things really kind of tie together. So I would, at one time there was a kind of safe routes to school task force in the citizenry, and maybe we need something. I haven't heard anything about it in recent times, and I think maybe we need to drive that at the governance level. I've been the advocate for the school crossing guards from the start. I still am, but I see it as ideally part of a larger effort to get kids walking and biking to school, and there are probably a lot of other opportunities in that direction. With regard to the social services pieces, the mental health, dental health, and rent relief, those are all obviously huge priorities for our most distressed residents, but I don't think that is, but I'd rather, to the extent that the city needs to step up to fill holes in what the county and the state are doing, I'd like to have us study what the county and the state are providing or can reasonably be expected to provide, and figure out where the city's resources can do the most good. I don't see that as, I see that as just too far from the objectives of the sugar sweetened beverage tax. Finally, I do support very strongly the walk and roll idea. I think it has a couple of kind of unique features. It will, I think that once people have walked or rolled once to the shoreline, they will have a different feeling about walking or rolling to it in the future. If it's successful, I think that people may say, hey, this is a way to get down there and not have to worry about waiting in line for a parking spot. And that seems very valuable and very much in accord with the sugar sweetened beverage tax. It also, and while it seems somewhat expensive, the big part of that, the two of the big pieces of it are the transportation side of it, which is that educational effort to get people moving down to the shoreline. And the other is paying people for doing their work. These entertainment people have been completely out of work for a very long time. They don't get many opportunities at all to do their to practice their profession. And I think that this is a wonderful way to benefit the city, to achieve the goals of the program, and benefit everyone who might participate, which is anybody who wants to.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Nason. So I am in favor of the Healthy Me Music and Movement Program. I think that is important, as well as the swim program. I would be in favor of those. The Crossing Guard Program, I know we funded that, but I'm like Councilmember Tiedemann. I wonder if we could find funding somewhere else in order to utilize this sugar sweetened beverage tax for something that would be more conducive in the community. One thing that I wanted to propose was public restrooms, especially on that Aloni Greenway. I don't think we've had that discussion, but I know that has been brought up before about having public facilities somewhere on that trail. I'm in favor of the education campaign. I would want to know more information on what that would look like. The bike safety program, I think that also too is important as well. Now, I know we go back and forth on the rent relief program, and I know Councilmember Tiedemann stated that, of course, the state is doing something, the county is doing something, but at what point do we continue to wait for them to help residents that are suffering right now, that are possibly going to be evicted because of the red tape or whatever's holding the funds back? So I would want to do more research, especially figure out how can we distribute those funds, what would be the criteria in doing so, and possibly partnering with some organization that can distribute the funds. How will we measure those funds to come out? I know the rent relief program from the county is very intensive. They ask a lot of questions, and there's a lot of things that go into that, whereas we as a city could possibly have something that is, more streamlined, right, to help the residents that are in need right now. So I would like us to come up with a plan, or at least staff come up with ways on how or what that would look like from the city's perspective. And then, maybe if a resident gets that from the city, maybe that's reported to the county. I don't know. I don't want to go through the logistics of that, but this is just something that we can think about, because the immediate need now is that people are losing housing. So how can we as a city help combat that, with this tax? I would agree that the water station at the waterfront, somehow that is needed. I've been out there several times, and you're right, there's not a place to have fresh water on a regular basis. So I would look into see how we can make that happen. And I think that's about it for me. So Vice Mayor Jordan, and then we can kind of wrap up and provide staff directives on priorities. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I support the Crossing Guard program, the bike safety program, and the garden series. I agree with Council Members McQuaid and Tiedemann. I think cutting down the walk and roll event and really framing this more as a matching grant so that they can go out to some of their other funders and try to get funding. So, if it's half or whatever, that is a lot of money for a half-day event for the city to support. As far as the crossing guards, while there may be a desire to find the funding somewhere else, given where we're at in time, the likelihood of being able to find funding somewhere else is very low. We're only, mere months out, and knowing how government finances work, I have no confidence that we'd find other funding outside of our general fund. So I think that program's important enough. But we are trying to work up an informal meeting with the school district so we can continue this conversation, put that on the agenda and continue this conversation so that we're not in the same position next year, or if we are, at least we've made a conscious decision to be in that position. I think it's worth saying some things about what is not coming up, at least that has been proposed, at least from my perspective. Street trees. I'm hoping to have street trees ultimately funded in part out of the 1/3 of recommended funding from the utility user tax increase. That's for greenhouse pollution reduction and climate adaptation. Increasing tree canopy is the main adaptation measure in our plan, so not ignoring that. I see funding down the line for that. There's the laundry program is funded. It's not funded at $15,000, but we have funded it out of council discretionary funds. The hang up now is administrative, not funding. So that has been taken care of, at least for the near term. I am interested in having water facilities added to Solano and to San Pablo, those commercial corridors. I think that's a long conversation. Hearing the cost of getting water out to the waterfront, seeing how many people are out there, the idea comes to mind of having a small bond measure to pay for that. That's the kind of appropriate financing mechanism for such infrastructure. And I think it is obviously very sorely needed, and will give people an opportunity not to be drinking sweetened beverages out there. And sidewalk shaving, path repair, we have a funding source for that. There's been getting a lot of focus. So I'm not interested in spending these funds on that.
Okay.
And with that, I'll leave it off. Thanks.
Is there anyone else that anyone want to add to or discuss further? All right, City Manager. Go ahead.
Mayor, would it be helpful if we put the chart up, attachment 6 to your agenda, to help try and prioritize the items?
That would be great. Thank you. Vice Mayor Jordan, did you have another question? Yes.
Well, I think as long as while we're waiting for that, I think a bathroom along the Greenway is a good and interesting idea. I would suggest that's something that can be forwarded to the Parks Master Plan as something to look at, since we have that effort going on right now. We have a good place for that to land. Thanks.
Thank you.
We'll aim to do this on the fly as the council gives any additional priorities for how staff returns a draft budget back to you, ideally at your next meeting in June, with costs associated with the programs as best as we can estimate them in the priority order, if the council is able to give that priority order.
Anyone want to start? So we agreed on Healthy Me Music program. So we can take that. I think we all agreed on that, and stop me if we did not. I believe the bike safety program, did we all agree on that as well?
No,
No?
I'm not as excited about that as some of these others, but
Okay.
I think there were probably 3 or 4 that did, so let's leave it in.
Okay.
I have a comment on that.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Suggested that the crossing guard program and the bike safety program, I'd like to see funds reserved for funding both of those, but I think that I would like to see us reach out to the school district about the Safe Routes to School partnership, and whether there are things that we should be pursuing together to make sure that that we're taking advantage as best we can of opportunities to get kids walking and biking to school.
Okay.
You know, my concern with that, Rochelle, I think that's fine. Where we sign a contract with an outside agency or an outside vendor for the crossing guards, I want to make sure that we move it along at least far enough that we don't lose out, even if we move around how we fund it at some point later in the process.
Yeah, I assume we've got enough to keep it going to June 30th.
Oh, for sure. But I don't want to, we don't want to move too fast. And if we
Okay.
end up after that, I just want to make sure we get that
Yeah,
right.
yeah, nobody wants administrative problems to crop up as a result of delays.
Right,
But
exactly.
we do, I think it is important to have some ongoing dialogue with the school district about the need to kind of modernize our city's transportation options.
Okay. We also agreed on, let's see where the other one is at. The Albany swims, I think we agreed on that, correct?
I think so.
And I think that's it, unless I'm missing something. Councilmember,
I heard a lot of agreement about a partial funding for walk and roll to the shore, perhaps a matching grant. Would people be comfortable with a $6,000 grant or matching grant?
Sure.
Yes.
Well, at this point, we're just prioritizing, right? So we could not come up with the actual dollar amount right now.
Vice Mayor Jordan, do you have something to say, or Councilmember Tiedemann? I can hear you, but not see you.
I was going to say, I'm comfortable talking about it in more concrete terms next time. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Vice Mayor Jordan, did you have something to say?
There was also a request for, I presume, although they didn't put a number on it, but by analogy, $1,600 for another series on the community center gardening talks.
Yep.
I mean, will we all agree on possibly looking into more or a concrete plan for the rent relief and seeing what that would look like? We do research and have a concrete plan for that.
That or social services, I think, seem
Or
to be the
social-
general. Yeah.
Right.
I think we should be looking at those things, but not from this source.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I do too. I think that's going to take a bit of research.
I would say with the exception of dental, because it's got a clear nexus with this, and it's often something that is even less funded, which is saying something than other health services.
Although I was involved in getting one person, one unhoused person to a dentist, someone who really needed it. And it turned out there was a program with Lifelong that was able to help him. So I think it's something we need to look into a little more closely.
Right. And what the need is.
Mm-hmm.
The education campaign on reducing soda consumption, we haven't really spoken about that, but I'm curious if there's, given the number of cities that have this going on, I imagine there's some academic research on what education campaigns work and which ones don't. I mean, ultimately, the goal of this tax is to eliminate itself. And that's not happening. It's been basically flat for the first 3 years based on the numbers in the staff report. So it's not succeeding in its goal, which suggests doing something different. What we're proposing here isn't really something different, but I don't have a proposal because I haven't reviewed the research myself, but I imagine there's peer-reviewed research on what works and what doesn't work in terms of actually reducing sugar sweetened beverage consumption. So I am interested in the education campaign, just having a placeholder for that, because we're not succeeding at our goal.
Okay. And this was not the final. We're just trying to go through and see what's priority to give the staff right now. But I'm in agreement with, I think there needs to be more behind the educational component of this campaign to see, like you said, what works. Is there anything else for the sake of time? It's 6:38.
So are we asking staff to do research on the education campaign, or Preston, are you interested in that piece?
I love it. Put me on the spot. I appreciate it.
Sorry, but
No, that's totally fair. I'm certainly, given the resources I have through my day job, happy to plumb through the literature because I have access to it all. So not that I know anything about anything, but yeah, happy to work on that.
Well, just
if any staff member wants to work on it with me, please let me know.
Well, I'm thinking just to kind of give us an idea. I'm not even sure what that looks like for $10,000. What are we talking about doing?
Right.
So
There's
that's
no information in
piece I'm interested in.
Right.
You know, I would suggest another party we could turn to would be the school district, who will have the best access to information that's specific to Albany children. You know, and one of the reasons we didn't follow the Berkeley model, I was talking about that at the beginning, was partly that it was just that it was going to chew up a lot of administrative funding, but also that Albany seems to have an exceptionally well-educated parent population. Our largest low-income population, the big concentration of low-income people, are graduate students at the UC Village. And the issue there is less to do with education than, you know, in a more typical low-income community. So I would suggest we turn to the school district and ask, what do they think would help kids in the Albany schools to be less attracted to sugar?
Okay. All right. City Manager, is there anything else you need from us outside of this document to start at least the process before we can finalize this?
That's it. Thank you for taking the time to add priorities.
All right, thank you. We'll go ahead and move to item 2-2, fiscal year biennial budget.
I will simply introduce the item and our Finance Director, Heather Rowden. This is the first of several discussions about your upcoming 2-year budget for the city as presented through staff. After this meeting, we will have a discussion with our Financial Advisory Committee, and then it will return to the council for the opportunity for 2 additional discussions on the 2-year budget. This is in addition to the quarterly financial updates you receive regularly, as well as the potential for a mid-year update halfway through this 2-year budget period. Heather?
All right, so I have a presentation. Okay. Maybe. Can everyone see this? So we are coming up on our next biennial budget, which is fiscal years 21-22 and 22-23. We have a fiscal year that begins July 1st. So there's been a lot of questions on what are we budgeting? What are we looking at? And there are a number of different types of budgets that the council sees. What you're seeing today is your operating budget, and that includes a handful of funds, mostly the general fund. We have the EMS fund, which is kind of a hybrid of special revenues, but it has operating expenses in it, which is why I've included it. I'm also including the sewer fund and the storm drain fund, because those two should really be, the sewer fund is an enterprise fund and the storm drain fund should be an enterprise fund. So those are funds that are funded through fees and are not reliant on the general fund, but they do have operating expenses in them. So another type of budget that you'll see, and we'll bring this your next meeting, is your special revenue funds. So this is budgeting, you know, your parcel taxes or anything that was passed with that 2/3 majority that is for a specific use. You also have your capital improvement plan, which is your larger budget. So it's for sewer and streets and larger purchases and, you know, a lot of things that Public Works does. And Public Works is the ones that bring you your capital improvement plan. And that plan budgets from special revenues and in certain cases from the general fund, but it is not operating. It's larger project-based items instead of your operating budget. You have debt service, which is something that I will also be bringing next week, or no, in however many weeks until your next meeting. And then you have your capital reserve funds. Those the council recently set up, and they're basically savings accounts for equipment, for items that are larger purchases that happen but don't happen annually. So you're not going to put it in your operating budget, but it is something that you need to plan for and save for. Capital reserve funds often are funded through general fund money and can be reallocated at any time. So in your biennial budget, and this screen is specific to the first upcoming year, the fiscal year 21-22 budget, you have a number of different revenues. As you can see, most of what the city uses or receives is property taxes, followed by franchise and other taxes, franchise fees, and then the utility users tax, property transfer tax, business license tax, all the littler taxes, sales and use taxes, and then the transfers in have recently gone up because we've moved all of our operating expenses into the general fund and are funding it through special revenue transfers. This screen is just the snapshot of the audit overview from the detailed budget attachment that you received. And it shows the fiscal year 19-20 actuals that we received, the budget that we have for the current year, which is July 1st, 2020 to June 30th, 2021. What we have received to date. I updated this chart today for yesterday's numbers, so it's different than the one that's in your packet. I will update it again before we bring it to you at your next meeting. And I will try to do a column of what we expect to end the year at. We'll see how much time I have. And then you see the fiscal year 21-22 proposed and fiscal year 22-23 proposed. Historically, property taxes have been rising. So you'll see that the budget goes up. Just to kind of detail out a few items in your revenues, your property taxes, the real property tax is anticipated to go up approximately 2.4%. But there is anticipated to be a decrease in unsecured or business property taxes because of the number of business closures due to COVID. So we're not really sure where that's coming in, but I did lower it about $150,000. So that's why you don't see as much of an increase in your property tax line as we normally would think we would get. Sales taxes, we have no change in the projection from the current year, the one that was just recently updated. Hopefully, everything starts to come back and those start to increase, but I didn't change it. It increased from the original projections when COVID first started, but I didn't increase it too much because I don't know where it's going to end up. Nobody really does. So I'm being on the more cautious side. And then you have your tax rate changes that just passed last November. So you have the increase in the utility users tax. The electric and gas increase was effective in March of this year. And then the real property transfer tax was effective the January 1st of this year. So when you're looking at your increases there, when we brought the most recent budget to you, we included a quarter of a year's increase, or maybe just over a quarter, or March, April, May, June. Yeah. And so you're not going to see a full year's increase. You're only for utility users taxes. You're going to see 8 months worth of an increase instead of the 12 months, because we've already in this year budgeted for the 4-month increase. So if you're looking to get dollar for dollar from what was on the ballot to what's in the budget, you're not going to see that because we already included 4 months in this year for the utility tax increase. Expenses. This chart shows you approximately what we have in what our money is spent on. We have police, we have fire, including EMS, we have public works, recreation, community development, and then our pension unfunded liability. I brought that out on its own because, as you can see, it's a large part of our operating budget. What do we spend our money on? We spend our money on salaries and benefits, and then on, all other stuff that we do to run the city. As you can see, the majority of what we spend is on staff time. A lot of what we provide is services. So it's the people that we're really funding. When you look at your annual budget, which we'll go through in detail after, what did we change for expenses? We've made some staffing changes. The assistant to the city manager is retiring. And so we've taken the opportunity to look over how duties are allocated and rearrange some of the staffing in the administrative division. We're asking for a deputy city clerk. The strain on the city clerk's office has increased over the years. And in addition, the assistant to the city manager did some of those duties. And so we're asking for a deputy city clerk position. And then we have miscellaneous adjustments. For example, we are asking to fund one of the previously unfunded recreation coordinator positions because we are trying to increase the staff in Albany Cares. And we are moving economic development from community development into the administrative division. And so we've moved some staffing around there. And then we have the structural changes, which is really the move of the economic development division from the community development department to under administration. So as Nicole said, there's a number of steps that we're going to be taking after this. We are going to the Financial Advisory Committee for a more detailed review. One of the things that I'm going to be asking you today is for direction on what you'd really like them to review. And that's on June 2nd. I'm bringing the budget back to you on the 7th. And in addition to another view of what you're looking at now with any potential changes based on the sugar sweetened beverage tax discussion, based on, if staff look, and I had moved KALB to rec, and then we decided we were moving it back to admin. So there's going to be some changes, but not too many. You're also going to be seeing your special revenue funds in addition to the operating funds that we're going to talk about in detail today. On the 7th, I will bring your special revenue funds. We are going to talk about a long-term outlook. What are we looking at in 5 to 10 years regarding pensions, regarding reserve funding for equipment purchases, things like that. And you're going to see your debt service. And then we'll come back again based on any changes that you guys have from the 7th for a second reading and hopefully approval on the 21st. So with that said, I was just going to go through this unless anyone had questions and we wanted to do this in a more detailed. I know we're coming up on 7 o'clock. So how, Janelle, Mayor Gary, is there?
Can you move your screen, and I'll just ask the council if they had any questions at this point. No one? Okay.
I'm
Go
just
ahead.
not sure what
Oh,
to.
go ahead.
I'm not sure what to ask when is all. Maybe we should let's let Heather complete her presentation.
Right. I just thought if there is anything now, that's fine. Go ahead, Heather. Thank you.
All right, so in that case, I will just go through page by page and kind of explain what we're looking at. So the first page is the audit overview for specifically your general fund money. It breaks it down by type of revenue and then by expenditures. It was pointed out to me that when I moved around some of the subdivisions, I did not follow through with the totals, so I will make sure that that is updated when it comes back to you. The bottom line numbers, the total expenditures and the excess or deficiency of or revenues is accurate. It's just whether it's in general government or police or fire that it's a little mixed up. As you can see, the budget for this year was passed with a $1.5 million deficit. We don't anticipate that we'll realize that deficit. I don't anticipate that we will have a huge surplus though. We are anticipating the deficit increasing from the 1.5 to 1.8 as PD becomes fully staffed, as Public Works comes to full capacity, and as our pension costs increase, we will get closer to recognizing a deficit in the general fund. So, oh, it went away. Let me reopen this file.
Vice Mayor Jordan, you had a question?
Yeah, well, I'm concerned we're going to run out of time. We only have 4 minutes left, so I've got some input I wanted to provide, but I don't know when or if that's going to be possible. But it seems like we should grab every iteration we can if members have comments.
And Mayor, may I add that it's okay to blend into your next meeting. It's just not okay to start early. So if you want to spend more time on this agenda item, you're perfectly able to do so.
Okay. All right. Heather, did you want to go ahead and finish, and then we'll address your question after that, Vice Mayor? Okay, is that okay? Okay.
All right, so moving on, you have the summary by department. This is broken out by fund, so it's by your operating funds. First, you have your general fund, and these expenses, revenues, and the total matches the totals on the first page. It just goes further into by department. As you can see, the city treasurer's department, the city elected city treasurer was changed to an appointed city treasurer. That moved into finance, so there's no more expenses here. Administration includes all of your property taxes, all of your general fund revenues. So this department looks like it's making a lot of money because it is. And then human resources. I'm just going to skim through this so that we can go down to the detail. And then you have your EMS fund, your storm drain, and your sewer fund. So going down to the detail, they're in city council, small changes based on salaries and benefits projected. Again, city treasurer department is closing. Administration, the salaries are decreasing under city manager based partly on the reallocation that we were talking about earlier. No other changes. IT, changes to salaries and benefits, increase to a number of our software subscriptions. And then no change to the city attorney. Risk management insurance costs are increasing. Economic development, we are increasing. We currently have, this shows one staff person, but the staff person should really be allocated between economic development and the city manager department. That's a change that'll come to you next. This person will be, Nicole, did you think 50% economic development?
About that, the individual will be spread over a few different division areas in the city manager's department budget.
Okay. And then we have some professional services that we're adding into economic development. Non-departmental, the increase in retirement is the increase in your unfunded liability payment. Then you have, this shows the increases in the taxes that we were talking about earlier. Human resources, the Human Resources Director did a lot of work to try to help bring down her other expenses. The citywide benefits, this increase includes the cost of the city's required cost for retiree health care. That is increasing slightly from the previous years. City clerk, again, we're requesting a deputy city clerk. It also was pointed out to me that we need to add in election costs for 2023. So this will be going up slightly before it comes back to you. Finance, salaries are going up. I tried to, I think I can cut down on the rental expense. We got rid of one of our we got rid of our folding machine. Police, the administration wages are going up, but the operations wages are projected to go down slightly. So normally we project salaries with our accounting system, and it's very detailed, and it basically assumes that everyone is going to get the max incentive that they could. So for example, if somebody had night shift in the current year, it would assume that they would have night shift for their whole shift next year. The program wasn't working properly when we upgraded our system, and so I calculated these manually using more of an averaging instead of the top step that, or the top incentive that they could get. So some of the projections are slightly lower than they would have been if the system had done it. And that's what you're seeing here. To kind of play off the sugar sweetened beverage discussion and explain how the two work in tandem, the operating budget and the sugar sweetened beverage taxes, the crossing guard contract is under professional services for police. So some of those sugar sweetened beverage tax expenses are in the police budget. And then support services, again, going down, it's just me averaging instead of picking top incentive for everyone. And then we go to fire. And we have a full-time inspector. We're asking for a little bit in additional salaries for some part-time inspectors so that we can make sure we stay on top of all of our inspections. We're increasing the other revenue, which in this case is mutual aid revenue. We are anticipating that we will have to send staff out to help with fires. So we are increasing our mutual aid. Previous years, it was 60,000. So we're bringing it up to 100,000. As you can see in previous years, we've received quite a bit. So I think this year was low. Part of it was we had some unfilled positions in the fire department due to retirements. And so we didn't have staff to send out, but also because some of the revenue that we made towards the end of fiscal year 2020, yeah, this is 2020, was received in fiscal year 2021. So fire suppression, again, most of the increase is salaries and benefits. And then here's where I have tried to better show the relationship between the EMS fund and the general fund. At about 2 o'clock in the morning the other day, I was thinking and I was like, I have it. I know how to explain it to you. So when you have, pretend you have 2 checking accounts, right? You personally have 2 checking accounts. One of them has $100 in it and the other one has $500 in it. And you need to spend $150 out of the one that has $100 in it. You take $50 from the one that has $500 in it, checking account 1, and you move that $50 to the checking account that only has $100 in it. So then you spend your $150. So now checking account 2 has no money in it. You didn't spend $200, which is the 150 here and the 50 from here. You only spent $150, but you have $50 less in this checking account. Well, that's what we do when we talk about the general fund versus the EMS fund. The EMS fund spends more money than it brings in. So the general fund has to cover it. Now, when we go up to the top and I have, the combined general and EMS fund, I don't want to overstate what the fire department costs. So I don't include this transfer. But it's also important to know I only have $450 in this checking account now. I don't have that $500 anymore. So I include it when I say, what are we doing specific to the general fund? So I hope that helped. I know it is not an easy concept, but both of them are very important. And so I hope that helps a little bit in talking about the relationship between the 2 funds.
Just chime in and say I find this a much clearer presentation the way it's formatted now. So thank you for working on that very much.
But that's my hope. But sometimes what's in my head and what comes out are not always clear. So that's the relationship between these 2 funds. So back to the EMS fund. So yeah, some salaries and benefits are going up. There's no increase in proposed service charges for the ambulance. You'll see that revenue appears to be down. Call volume was down due to COVID, but we anticipate that it will come back up. So I didn't change the projection. I know we've been receiving more. The change here was due to a change in the person that does our billing. And so they've clearly been collecting a lot more than we were before, but because of COVID, I don't want to increase it to pre-COVID levels without having another, year under our belt to say, yes, this is definitely, what we really should be at, and not knowing when call volume will come back up fully. So then we go down to Public Works, and this is a change because previously you weren't seeing storm drain and sewer in connection with the Public Works operating expenses, but they really are operating expenses for Public Works, even though they're in different funds. And this is really an accounting thing, why they're in enterprise funds versus all in our other special revenue funds. Accountants just make up rules and I have to follow them. So these funds don't have the transfers that the EMS fund has, because with enterprise funds, they fully fund themselves and their expenses are quoted directly to those funds. So there aren't transfers in between these operating funds. You will see transfers from special revenue funds into these operating funds to support operations. And I'll use the example that I always use because I think it's a good one, is the parks maintenance budget. So you'll see that historically, this was, $250,000. And all of a sudden in 2020, it jumped up to, or 2021, it jumped up to $672,000. Well, that's because we moved all of the operating expenses into the general fund because it's the operating fund. And so your expenses increased, but your revenues also increased. Now, the expenses increased more than the revenues because the general fund is still taking on a little bit more of a burden than the special revenue funds, can support. But overall, you didn't have that much of an increase, but you did have an increase in, the services that were being provided because we were able to support additional work because of these special revenue funds. Now, like I said in my presentation earlier, you will have at your next meeting, you'll have your special revenue funds detailed out as well. So, so you'll be able to see the interplay. And then other than that, we have Parks and Recreation. Recreation, there's been some adjustments that I mentioned earlier. And then in community development, they're asking for additional professional services. And then that department moved, economic development moved from community development to administration. And that is the end of me going over detailed numbers and scrolling through screens that all of you have to look at.
All right, thank you, Heather. I'll open it up for discussion from the council. Who would like to go first? Vice Mayor Jordan, go ahead. And then Councilmember Nason.
Yeah, thank you very much, Director Rowden. You said there'll be a special fund presentation or inclusion of special fund information in our next. That might answer what I was hoping to get at some point, which is the equivalent of pages 2 and 3, but for all the revenues sources in the city, or many of the revenue sources in the city. So we have, for instance, we have property taxes, we have franchise and everything else, but those are big buckets that have a lot of different pieces to them. So my hope was to get more detail on each of those. For instance, property transfer tax, because obviously you have that behind the scenes to be able to sum that up. And then under each one of those, there might be a portion that went to the general fund and portion that's staying with capital improvement, essentially. And so we can get more of a granular view on where funds are coming from and where they're going to. Now, obviously, some of the funding sources are going 100% to the general fund, and some are not. So that'd be my request, so we can understand the revenue side more, because with a structural deficit, I think it's going to be important to understand that side in more detail. Not as much detail as the pages beyond page 3, but maybe 2, 3 level of detail. And I think, let's see, I had another comment here. Yeah, we haven't talked about that. There's another attachment that is the number of full-time equivalent employees, and that's proposed to go up by 1, which is 1 out of a little bit over 100, so it's not an astronomical increase, but still a little concerning given that we have a structural deficit, that there's a proposal to add staff. So I'll just leave that where that is without further detail. And I am interested in, I am alarmed at what was put out in the last study session about not tracking where the sugar sweetened beverage tax money goes, because it's general fund revenue. I think we're going to lose, we're at risk of losing faith with the voters. As somebody who has campaigned for tax measures and succeeded, we're in this model now of trust us, we're not going to make it a special tax, so we can use the 50% threshold, but trust us, we're going to spend it on what we said we're going to spend it on. And the further away we move from that, the less likely we're going to be able to use that model going forward, and we're going to be back to 2/3 for everything. Those are my comments. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Vice Mayor. Councilmember Nason.
Yeah, I'd like to echo what Vice Mayor Jordan said about keeping faith with the voters and providing, being very transparent about what we're doing is obviously very important, but also tracking what we spend in connection with various things that have been approved by the voters. And the one that is of tremendous concern to me is Measure M. We did have the voters put before the voters and had their approval for a parks maintenance tax, and we need to be able to show what's coming in and what's going out and where it's going, if we're going to put additional measures, to be able to justify in the future, especially ones like Measure M that had no sunset associated with them. We need to really be transparent with that. I've said this before. I think I've said it in council, and I've said it to you outside of council chamber, but I struggle with the fact I do understand, appreciate, and applaud the fact that the staff is doing so much work to improve our accounting system. But it's a great frustration from the perspective of a council person that basically our financial system has been in transition virtually the entire time that I've been on the council. And I want to emphasize the need to get to where we need to be, where we've got a CAFR coming out before December 31st. We've got budgetary documents that anyone could read and understand, all those things that we put into our strategic plan. We need to keep pursuing. And one of the questions I'd like to hear is, do we have enough, when we're going to be talking about if we've got some additional funding, what I'm hearing is it's going to the city manager's office, including economic development. And I'm also hearing there's going to be more put into Albany Cares. And those both sound like things that we very much need, but I'm also concerned about whether we have all the resources that we need to begin meeting our financial planning and reporting objectives, whether we have enough to meet our capital improvement plan objectives, and a completely new thing that it's not completely new, but it's coming at us like a train, is the death of the forest on Albany Hill. We may have an extraordinarily expensive thing to address fairly urgently. Hopefully we will have state funding to deal with it, but we've got a mass of dead trees up there. And, at this point, at least to my knowledge, there's no real plan for dealing with the scale of what is in effect a natural disaster, happening before our eyes. So there's, and of course there are the other ones that we have been planning for, like the PERS stuff. So I hope that we can talk about all this as policy issues when we come back and have additional time. In the meantime, as I've said, I'd like to see, the year to date is not really all that helpful. We need an estimate so that we can compare what we need to do. We need to compare what we're doing now with what you're proposing we do in the future. And right now we can't do that because the year to date doesn't really give us the basis for understanding what we're doing and where we are right now. I do have concerns. One of the things people ask you when you're an elected official is, well, how big is your budget? And of course, during talking about years in the past, you talk about how much you spent, your expenditures, and our expenditures have been in the 22 million, 21, 22 and down to 21 million. But we're budgeted up in the 25, 26 million, and going up to 27 million over a couple of years. It's hard to, and I realize there's lots of reasons for all this. And, we had that huge increase in our police funding, which I'm glad to see we're kind of backing that down a little bit. But we need to have a budget that gives us a meaningful sense of where we are and what is changing. So those are my comments. I really would like to see the estimates for the current year as soon as those can be provided, and a little more from the city manager on the priorities that lead to the policy recommendation to increase administration. And I'd like to hear the adequacy of our public works and our financial planning and reporting resources. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Mason. Councilmember McQuaid?
No, I don't have anything.
Councilmember Tiedemann, go ahead, please.
First of all, thank you, Heather, for the detailed presentation. It's much appreciated. I'll be pretty brief, as I think the main thing that jumps out at me looking at the higher level budget and looking at that pie chart, and I think we're going to hear about this as we go to public comment, is the biggest single expense in the plurality. The biggest single department we spend on is the police, and it's unfortunately not the place to snap our fingers and change that budget as part of the budget process, as it needs to be a really big and serious conversation about how we prioritize funding and public safety. But I would love to have the Financial Advisory Committee seriously look at that and think if there are ways we can reallocate those funds. And I look forward to hopefully a serious discussion of that same issue being a part of the task force on policing, as well as our purview going forward, of if there are ways we can reallocate that funding to different means of ensuring public safety and social services. And that's it.
Thank you, Councilmember Tiedemann. Just want to piggyback on that. I know there's, and you may have touched on this, but if you could expand, or maybe it's going to come later, but the state and federal mutual fund for the firefighters, I know that's been going into the general fund, but I guess I'm just trying to understand, why is it not going towards helping the firefighters with their budget to increase that so they can meet their staffing needs and whatever expenses they have?
So the mutual aid reimbursement is just that, a reimbursement of costs that we already expended on specifically staffing, and there's an allocation for like use of equipment as well, but budget for overtime to cover mutual aid, and then we get reimbursed for that overtime. It's not an additional revenue, it's a reimbursement for costs we've already received or already incurred.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'm going to go ahead and see if there's public comment before we bring it back to council to wrap this session up. It looks like we have 3 comments. We'll bring it down to 2 minutes, please. Thank you. Go ahead, please. Looks like you're muted if you're speaking. You're muted if you're speaking, Ms. Smith. Hand is up.
Hi, this is Corey Dusty. I wanted to, I think the other caller might have been unable to get through.
Go ahead.
Great. I wanted to wholeheartedly second everything that Councilmember Tiedemann said, and to specifically ask if sworn officers who receive higher pay than non-sworn officers or personnel are being used for jobs that can be done by non-sworn officers. This is a very clear direction to look at, and specifically around the crossing guard, right? Because that was coming up. If sworn officers are spending their time being a traffic, a crossing guard, that's not the best use of their time, right? Thus the potential for training somebody else. And ultimately, I hope that the task force and council will be looking at moving traffic enforcement in general towards a non-sworn officer position. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that it? Go ahead, Jeremiah.
Hi, good evening, City Council. Mr. Jeremiah here. You know, regarding the budget, this is kind of interesting because, you know, we have the sugar sweetened beverage tax and what to spend on that. So this budget, my suggestions, my positive suggestions are, you know, anything with this budget, obviously add toward showers, public health, mental health would be great. I know, Peggy, you mentioned public health was going to be mentioned a lot, and you're right. It sure is. And so all these things are happening with this budget right now, but one of the most important things that we could focus on here, you know, for the community right now, because we're still in the pandemic, we're still coming out as pandemic. So people kind of get the wrong idea. Adding to the police budget, you know, people seem to be against that. But I'm not sure why people are bashing the police budget. I think if we almost add to the police budget, we'd have more of a diverse police force. Because by adding to the budget is actually creating jobs. And so if we added the budget for the police force, we're going to create jobs, which is going to allow new and fresh people to come in. And it's going to allow a more diverse police force in Albany. You know, so I know there's pros and cons and some people have their opinions, but I think if we do add to the police budget that it might end up helping because we can get people of different ethnicities, people with different viewpoints. So, all right, keep up the good work, everybody.
Thank you for your comment. Is there anyone else? Go ahead, please.
Hi, just in regard to the last caller's comment, increasing the budget does not equal increasing diversity and does not even necessarily lead to an increase in diversity. If you want diversity, you can do it with the same budget you already have, and you can start recruiting people who are in diverse spaces, have a diverse background, have a diverse educational background, are different ages and abilities and ethnicities. You do not need extra funds to make your department better, more diverse, or more understanding of the community. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Next, please. Go ahead. Go ahead. I think she's on here twice.
I'm not sure which one
Hello?
she's
Can
able
you
to
hear me?
talk. Yes.
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead, please.
Okay, good evening, Council. I'd like to make a statement here. The statement is about your budget. First of all, for the city that you of your size, the budget is really out of kilter. I will say this because there are different types of budget, but you have to have a budget set up that's representative of the monies that you have. You've had 8 years consistently to go over operational types of things as well as city services. And consistently, you've had people to say whether or not this account is valid, this one isn't, or this one is not. Going forward, you have to have accountability. You have to have money broken down to where it's specific to what you're spending money for. How in the world do you forecast something when you don't know where you're starting from? And when certain people may know what you're starting from, but nobody else has the history but that person. That is crazy. That is ludicrous. And it's got to stop. If you want to move progressively, I do agree with the former caller. You don't have to have diversity. You don't get diversity by a budget plan or anything like that. What you do is you recruit the people and you include people who are not representative of your city. And in your case, that would be anybody that's not Caucasian, period, because that's the bulk makeup of your city. The budget, again, let me go back to that real quick, is that you have to have more specifics and breaking down which accounts go where. You have a person there that's not itemizing, that's being able not to justify what staff, or one councilwoman said they're not being able to justify why you have the staff you need to have and for what percentage and for what's going to be brought down in the future. You're going to be getting some money from government. I get it, from states, but you're going to be received not as much as you think, but you won't be able to allocate it in the right places because you don't even know where you're going, where you came from in order to allocate. And that's all I wanted to say about that. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, caller. Is there anyone else?
That's it.
All right, we'll go ahead and bring it back to the council so we can move forward. Did any other council member have anything to say? Vice Mayor Jordan, please, briefly.
Yeah, another thought was, I think, to provide more complete context for all of us looking at the budget, it would be useful to have at least some line in there. I know it's still part of the general fund budget, but a line in there about the amount of capital spending that the city does each year. Because without that, it sort of gives a false impression of how much the city spends and needs to spend to keep itself going. For instance, for street paving and things like that, for sewer repair. So that would provide useful context. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Is there anything else? We'll go ahead and wrap this up. Councilmember Nason, briefly.
Yeah, I would like to echo what Vice Mayor Jordan said, and that I'd like to see an update to the capital improvement plan budget and actual chart, which has been provided to us in the past. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Anyone else? All right. Thank you, Heather, for your presentation. Smile. All right. Is there any other comments before we close out our special study session? All right, we'll go ahead and adjourn our special meeting. We'll go into our regular meeting. And we'll start with item number 3. I think, Mala, did you want to report from our special meeting last Tuesday, I believe it was?
Oh, yes. If you give me a minute, I can do that.
Okay, my apologies. I called you on the spot.
No, you have a good memory. Give me one. Thank you, Mayor Gary. Last week, the council met in special session, and we did report the same announcement at that special meeting, but given there was no one in attendance, the council also suggested that we report it out at this meeting. And at that meeting, the council authorized the retention of an appraiser to appraise the property located on Albany Hill pursuant to California Code of Civil Procedure, Section 1263.510. Council has authorized our office to work with an appraiser and the easement holder regarding the property in an attempt to acquire the easement located on Albany Hill. This is for the maintenance of the cross on Albany Hill. After the appraisal is prepared, the city will have the opportunity to discuss an offer to acquire the easement pursuant to Government Code Section 7267.2 et sec. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, City Attorney. We'll go ahead and move to item number 4, ceremonial matters. I'll go ahead and turn it over to Councilmember Nason to present our certificate of appreciation for staff leaders. Councilmember Nason, I'm sorry.
Mayor, I think I'm actually doing that, and I think you're having screen trouble. Am I correct?
Oh, I'm sorry. You didn't hear me. I was calling on you, Councilmember McQuaid. Sorry about that. But yes, they call on you.
Thank you.
Okay. It is my honor this evening to welcome Laura Hansen to our meeting and to virtually present her with a certificate of appreciation. And if Heidi and Laura could raise their hands, the city clerk will bring you in. The certificate of appreciation reads, The City of Albany commends Laura Hansen in recognition of many years of volunteer service as a Girl Scout leader. And I now would like to invite Heidi to say a few words.
Hi, thank you for having us. I grew up in Albany, and Laura Hansen led my Albany-Berkeley Girl Scout troop for 12 years. And she instilled a strong desire in all of us girls to make the world a better place. And she truly had a profound impact on my life and the lives of my sister scouts. She helped us discover who we were as individuals, and she taught us how to work effectively to reach shared goals as members of groups. And she also just gently opened us up to experiences that were even beyond what we could imagine, from horseback riding to traveling to Japan with our troop on a scout exchange when we were teens. And then 2 years later, she empowered us to plan and implement hosting the Japanese Scouts when they traveled to Albany. Laura is just someone who is consistently thinking of others and continues to serve our community. And I just really want to thank her so much for what she's done, and also thank you so much for helping us honor her tonight.
Laura, would you like to say a few words?
I'll say just a very few words. I don't want to take up too much time, but I want to thank, number one, the City of Albany for recognizing me as this volunteer award, and also Heidi and all the rest of the scouts from my troop 908 for recognizing me. Heidi, you've done an outstanding job organizing all of this, and I certainly appreciate it. In 1980, I believe it was, is when I started the Girl Scouts. Heidi was one of the original members of that troop. And as she said, we had a lot of experiences. I am so proud of all the girls that I have mentored along the way. We had a reunion just yesterday, and many of the girls were available for that reunion. We did it via Zoom, and I'm very proud to say that they have all played it forward, and they're making positive impact on the youth of this in their world, and in the city of Albany, as well as Colorado and South Carolina and all the other places where the girls are currently living. And several of them are Girl Scout leaders, and Heidi is an assistant Girl Scout leader to my granddaughter. So thank you for recognizing me, and thank you to Heidi. Thank you to all the scouts that they're my daughters. I've always considered them my second daughters, and I'm just very proud of them and very proud of this accomplishment. And again, I appreciate the recognition.
Well, if I can just jump in for a minute to add that Laura and I were Girl Scouts together back when we were in grammar school, different troops, but we crossed paths quite often in grammar school and high school. So it's so great to see you again and to hear that you're still scouting. That's so wonderful.
Thank you.
Okay, Mayor, I'll turn it back to you.
All right, thank you, Councilmember McQuaid. Councilmember Nason, real quick, briefly.
I had the good fortune to serve with Laura Hansen on a board of a nursing home, and always was so impressed by her commitment to the community and everything she does. Thanks.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and move to line item number 5, the city manager's report. City manager, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I will be brief. I would like to share that Albany summer camps are back. Please check out our website to learn more about these camps. They are in person, and we're starting slowly and safely. So please take advantage of the opportunity. Picnic rentals are now available as well. Those are, again, on our website or at the recreation front desk by calling for a rental reservation. We are 43 meal deliveries away from 19,000 meals delivered over the course of the pandemic. So I would once again like to thank our staff who have been dedicating their time to safely deliver those meals to some of our most vulnerable residents. The Washington Avenue paving project is just about complete with phase 1. East Bay Mud is still in the area, replacing some water lines. We anticipate advertising phase 2 of this project in June, so there is more work to come there. Also, Anne is sharing a site quickly here. I'd like to congratulate the City of Albany. If you see over on the right-hand side of the screen, the second city named under those that have received vaccinations. We are getting there. So thank you to all who have done their part to stay safe and get those vaccinations. And finally, a spotlight here. AlbanyParks.com is the website that we are using for our Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Master Plan. Please take some time to check out that site as it continues to grow over time in this dynamic and engaging public planning process through both a virtual opportunity right now and hopefully in the near future, more in-person opportunities outdoors in our parks to give input to the critical nature of our limited park space and the future of that space. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, City Manager. Next, we'll go down to line number 6. This is good of the city public comment. We'll open this up for public comment, and please know that each speaker has 3 minutes to speak on items that are not on the agenda. So we'll give you a chance to raise your hand. And Anne, if you want to go ahead and start. All right, go ahead, please.
Hi, this is Margie Marks. I've lived in Albany for over 40 years. What surprised me when I first moved here was that there seemed to be the city council and then there was the school board, and never shall the twain meet. And I came from a much larger city, and I thought in a city our size, there would be more coordination between the school district and the council. About 3 weeks ago, I was thrilled to get the city email to see there was a section about the schools, about the Albany schools and their opening plans. As an Albany citizen who doesn't have a child in the school district, I'm interested in whether the schools are open, closed, or whatever. In addition, a couple of weeks ago, the Giltrack Farms was on the weekly email. It's a community resource, the only farmers market in town, and probably the only farmers market in which the food is grown in the same place that it's sold. These were small changes, but I think they can make a huge difference in building community in Albany. And I want to thank the council. I don't know who is responsible for these 2 things, but I'd like to see more of it. And I think it's really important. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comment.
Hi, I'd like to speak regarding the item on the consent calendar for the Juneteenth holiday proposal.
Hold on
And
one
I'd like
second.
to- Yeah.
Sorry, this is only public comment. If you can hold that to the next item is our consent calendar, and you'll have the opportunity to speak on that item. Thank you. Any other comments?
That's it.
All right, now we're moving into the consent calendar. I will zoom around the room. I will start with Councilmember Tiedemann. Go ahead, please.
I got nothing.
Okay. Vice Mayor Jordan.
7-7, please.
All right, Councilmember McQuaid. Nothing? No?
No.
Councilmember Nason. I can't hear you. You're on mute.
Sorry, mine was also 7-7.
7-7. All right. I'll go out into public comment. See if anyone would like to pull anything. Looks like we have 2. Go ahead, please.
Okay, thank you. Now I'd like to speak regarding the item on the agenda for the Juneteenth calendar.
So you're pulling 7-14?
7-14, thank you.
Okay, hold on one sec. Next, it looks like we have one more.
716, please.
716. All right, I'll bring it back to the council if there's no one else, and then we'll go out in order. So we'll start with 7-7. Vice Mayor Jordan, go ahead, please.
Thank you. Yes. So I reviewed the background in this, and it cites a scientific paper, but it cites it inaccurately. So this proposal is to support a plan to have California reduce its global pollution emissions by 80% by 2030, and then offset the remaining 20% with 100 million tons per year of enhanced natural system sequestration. I looked at the scientific paper that it cited as supporting that 100 million tons a year, because that's a number that is way beyond what my understanding was through my professional work. That paper has at the outside 18 million tons per year as being possible through the methods that they put forward in that plan. So, and then that's just one reference. I've looked at other references too from Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory and some other reports, and 100 million tons a year is way beyond what is possible. So it's not a credible plan based on the science that's out there. And so on that basis, I do not support passing this.
Okay. Councilmember Nason.
My issue is much smaller. I was just a little puzzled about why we're joining with Sonoma County and Marin County instead of Alameda County and Contra Costa County. That it seems like we should be rowing with our neighbors. Thanks.
And I see staff is on. Did you want to state anything or bring clarification to Vice Mayor Jordan and Councilmember Nason's concerns?
Hi,
Elizabeth?
this is Lizzie Carrad, the Sustainability Coordinator. Preston, I appreciate you catching that. That was not something I caught. Appreciate your insight to that. And for Councilmember Nason, this is a nonprofit that's based out of Sonoma, and they're asking jurisdictions to endorse their campaign. So while it's a nonprofit based in Sonoma County, other cities, none yet in Alameda County, but they're just asking cities throughout the Bay in general to support this plan. And we do work closely with our Alameda County neighbors on other climate action efforts, but this is a little bit different because it's coming from a nonprofit. Thank you.
Thank you. That's it. All right. Looks like we had 714 was in public comment. I believe it was Jennifer E. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. Yeah, my comment is that I understand the majority of city employees are SEIU, am I still on SEIU 1021 members, of which I happen to be a member. My name is Jennifer Steen. I'm a registered nurse and vice president of organizing for SEIU 1021. And I'm calling in tonight in support of the city having time and opportunity to fairly negotiate the consideration of this holiday, which was brought forward by the council, not by the membership. But now that this proposal has been brought, it is a very good idea to allow the city staff to participate in negotiating for this. And it's come to my attention that at this time there's a stalemate. So I'd like to see this be negotiated fairly and in good time in advance of the holiday, so that should a settlement be reached, staff can take the holiday off. Juneteenth is a very important day in remembrance of when slaves finally found out that slavery was over. Not when it was actually over, but when people found out. After being held in bondage, taken from homes, separated from families, disenfranchised, and God knows what other horrors, people were finally given an opportunity to make a life on their own, free of bondage, and still that information was withheld. So I think that it is only fair that the city employees have an opportunity to negotiate and have a day of remembrance, a day in which they do not have to forego some other federal holiday that may have been offered or some other state holiday. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comment. All right, and the last one was 716.
Excuse me. I also had a comment on.
Are you on 7? Okay, go ahead.
Yes, apologies. I didn't mention because it was already being pulled. I just had two little writing notes, language notes. One is that capital I for Indigenous people has become the standard, much like capital B for Black people. And more importantly is the use of the language, Indigenous people who once inhabited Albany. Indigenous people are still here. They still inhabit Albany. We need to not relegate them to the past, and that's part of the importance of Indigenous Peoples Day. I believe you had Karina Gold from the Lees John Ohlone tribe come and speak with you. So the language should reflect that it is not a past tense inhabited or a once, but that it is ongoing. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments for 714? All right, we'll go on to 716, please.
I
Go
might
ahead.
still be muted. Yes, okay.
Yes,
sorry.
go ahead, Corey.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask that it be specified which pride flag, because there are multiple, and to recommend the Progress Pride flag, which has the black and brown stripes for BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, and people of color folks, and the pink, blue, and white for trans folks. This is the current most inclusive pride flag that has been used in London, Boston. It's becoming widespread. It was made in 2018. You can see it in the Rainbow Crosswalk proposal later on. But I would recommend that flag, especially because last year I asked for the trans flag to be flown and was told that that would be a little more logistical and I'd have to remember to request in advance. But I think the Progress Pride flag covers all of those really nicely. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I'll bring it back to council. And looks like I'm looking for a motion to pass the consent calendar. Vice Mayor Jordan, go ahead, please. I'm sorry, hold on. Councilmember McQuaid, did you have a question?
Yeah, maybe Vice Mayor Jordan's going to take care of it. I'm curious if I'm not quite sure what to do about the item that you pulled, Vice Mayor, or 7-7. I don't know what to say, and I'm kind of counting on you as our scientific expert in this matter.
Yeah, and I appreciate you bringing that up. And certainly I didn't mean to expect staff to catch that level of detail. That's adjacent to my profession, so that's why I can be on that. I don't think there's much we can do other than not pass it because it's not a document or a platform that's under our control. So as a scientist, I can't vote for it because it's not scientifically accurate. Others will take other views, perhaps that, well, it's in the spirit of, and that's fine, but I don't.
So why don't we just pull it off?
Sure. Okay. So I will move that we pass consent, less item 7-7, with the language adjustments that Chair Dosty put into 7-14 and using the Progress Pride flag under 716.
Seconded.
All right, can we get a roll call?
Vice Mayor Jordan,
Yes.
Councilmember McQuaid,
Yes.
Councilmember Nason,
Yes.
Councilmember Tiedemann,
Yes.
Mayor Gary.
Yes.
Can we spend just one more quick moment since we had a comment from SEIU? Probably that's not something that can be discussed in open session, but I presume negotiations are ongoing. And my understanding, the intent of that item was not to close those negotiations, but rather to put that in place for the other departments that have represented employees.
City Manager, you can speak on that just briefly.
Vice Mayor Jordan stated that perfectly well. The information that was presented tonight is misleading at best, and I will be happy to follow up with additional detail. The conversation is ongoing.
All right. Thank you very much. We'll go down to line number 9, public hearing. And I think Mala, City Attorney, go ahead, please.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Gary. What is before you is a consideration of an amendment to Chapter 8-4 of the Albany Municipal Code relating to camping, hours of operation of public property, and fire safety. Back in 2019, there was a new case called Martin v. Boise, City of Boise, and it was a Ninth Circuit Court of Appeal case, and it dealt specifically with the prohibitions under the 8th Amendment that prohibit the imposition of criminal penalties for sitting, sleeping, or lying outside on public property for homeless individuals who cannot obtain shelter. The Martin case was very narrow, and it did not dictate that cities had to provide sufficient shelter for the homeless or allow anyone who wishes to sit, lie, or sleep on the streets at any time, at any place. But it did specify that an ordinance prohibiting sitting, lying, or sleeping outside at particular times or at particular locations might well be constitutionally permissible. Given this case, we thought it was prudent to come back to you and update the city's municipal code. While the city has been adhering to that case since 2019, we thought it would be good to codify provisions of the case and update certain provisions of the code. Specifically, we wanted to update the definition section. We also wanted to update the hours of operation section, and also indicate for camping that we were not including a prohibition on camping for city-sponsored programs or co-sponsored programs. We were adding that any city-owned property was prohibited from camping. We also wanted to add the language we talked about regarding Martin, that we couldn't enforce our camping ordinances in most parts of the city unless we were able to provide shelter to an individual. Again, as I mentioned, we're already complying with that provision since 2019, but we did want to codify it in our ordinance. And then we also wanted to make sure that it was clear that fires were prohibited on city-owned property. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. What is before you and recommended is the introduction of the ordinance.
Thank you very much, City Attorney. Go ahead and open it up for discussion for council. Nope. Councilmember Tiedemann.
So just so I'm super sure, Mala, can you clarify section 8, 4.4 C? This is saying that we're updating this so that we are not moving any homeless person if there's no other facility available, yes?
Yes, so the section you referred to, Councilmember Tiedemann, 8-4.4 C, there are certain areas of town, specifically they're listed in 8-4.3, which are the waterfront, Albany Hill, and Memorial Park, which you cannot camp in regardless. But in other locations, if we are not able to provide shelter to an individual, then we would not enforce the camping provisions of this ordinance. If we were able to provide shelter, either to transport the individual to a shelter of their choice that may be provided from another organization, or we provided a hotel voucher, or we worked with Berkeley Food and Housing Project, then we could enforce the ordinance. And likewise, if the individual wanted to decline services that we were able to provide.
So just to clarify, if they were on one of the properties that I identified in the earlier section, they could be moved regardless of whether there are other facilities available, just because they're on the specific, Albany Hill or the waterfront.
Correct. Those 3 locations are just completely prohibited from camping during those hours that are specified, whether we can provide shelter or not. That doesn't mean other locations within the city on city property would still be permitted. It's just those 3 locations are kind of what I would call a strict ban during those evening times.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Tiedemann. Anyone else? All right, I'll go ahead to the public or public comment. All right, go ahead, please.
Hello again, Corey Dusty. I would just like clarification on how this affects campers and RVs and trailers, as these seem to be included under definitions of camping structures. So I assume that means they would need to be provided a place to put them. And I would also like clarification around whether there would be anything around being allowed a place to put a tent, or if it would be that you have to go into a shelter. Because I know that one of the main obstacles is shelters can force you out at 5 in the morning and not allow you back in until late at night. And it depends on the shelter, but there's a loss of agency, and it's not always better than being in a tent on a sidewalk or somewhere that is hopefully a little safer than, you know, in a street. But so those are my questions. Do you have to provide a space for a camper, trailer, RV? And is there an allowance under this for a place to put a tent if declining services? Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Soto? All right, I'll go ahead and bring it back to council for further discussion. All right, well, seems like there's none. We have a motion.
I'll move the item.
Councilmember. Okay, second? Can I get a roll call?
I'm sorry, I don't know if it's my video, but I didn't hear who motioned or who second.
So Councilmember Nason motion and I second.
Okay. Councilmember Nason?
Aye.
Councilmember Tiedemann?
Abstain.
Mayor Gary?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Jordan?
Yes.
And Councilmember McQuaid?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, thank you. We're going to item number 11.1 in new business. It's a review of the work plan template for advisory bodies to the city council. Vice Mayor Jordan, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. So there's a number of policy proposals here for changing the format of the work plans a bit, not too dramatically, I don't think, but others will be the judge of that. So the first part, and maybe I'll go ahead and share my screen. I may. So the first part is motivated by a review when the arts and Parks, Rec, and Open Space draft work plans came to us, reviewing the prior work plan and seeing what had been accomplished. And so what is shown up here is the items from the prior Parks, Rec, and Open Space work plan. And these are the items that were indicated as having been either worked on or accomplished in the work plan draft that came to us. There were actually some additional items that I was aware that were worked on from following the work of that body. But in total, you can see that there are a large number of items that neither received work nor were accomplished. This is not reflected in the draft work plan as it came to us. Rather, the opening section only lists the accomplishments. And I think in doing so, we're missing out on an important body of information that would help us as the policy guide for the city, attendees, staff to learn from what has happened so that we can make improvements in the future to the process, and in particular calibrate the number of items to what the capacity is. And so just to show a little bit further, so it's about 14 out of about 28 items that received some work and or were accomplished over that work plan period. So the first suggestion is to open every work plan with a verbatim copy of the items that were in the previous work plan, and then to indicate those that have been accomplished, those that have been worked upon, and those that have not been worked upon. And then this section could close optionally with a narrative providing more context and details on what occurred over the previous 2 years. So again, the purpose of this is not in any way to be punitive. It's just that if we don't review transparently what we've done and where we are, then it's hard to accurately move forward with our priorities going forward. The work plan template actually says that the work plan items are supposed to be prioritized, and neither the arts nor the Parks, Rec, and Open Space items were prioritized to my eye. Now, maybe they were implicitly prioritized by the order that they were presented in. That's not my impression, but I could be wrong. I'd be happy to be told that's not the case by those who are more familiar with those work plans. The third recommendation is to propose an amount of work that matches the capacity based on this historical analysis. So as you saw from the Parks, Rec, and Open Space plan, there are about twice as many items in the 2019 to 21 plan that could be or then were worked on. Now, obviously, that was an unusual year because there were a number of months when the body didn't meet, 3 or 4, I believe. So its capacity was reduced as compared to what it would normally have been. Nonetheless, I don't think it was reduced so much that that would explain the discrepancy. And so I think by not working to calibrate the work items to the capacity, I certainly wouldn't feel that I'm doing my job as a council member to try to provide solid policy guidance on what's important and what is important but can't be worked on to provide that prioritization. As far as the work plan items themselves, they tend to come in 2 flavors. There's some that recur year after year or on some periodicity. This is recommendation 4. And there are others that are one time only. And I think it would be useful to divide those and list them separately so that we can review the recurring items should they continue to recur, because there tends to be an occurrence in institutions that what they've always done, they will always seek to continue to do. I think it's important to daylight those so that we specifically review, should we continue to do that or not, or is it taking up capacity, taking it away from other things that we think are more important. And then finally, there are obviously a lot of items that are brought forward that the advisory body reaches consensus would be useful to do, but they are probably more items that will make the cut in terms of capacity. But that's important institutional knowledge about possibilities for the future. And so there should be, the recommendation is to have a section in the work plan at the end that is a place for those items that are not to be worked on in the next period, but that were brought forward as a part of the forward thinking of the body, so that we have a record of those items. And then should the body get through the items that are actually in the work plan for work, we will have a ready source of future ideas to draw upon. So those are the various recommendations. Thanks for letting me present those, and quite curious to hear what everybody else say.
All right, thank you, Vice Mayor Jordan. We'll open it up to council members. Anyone have any questions, suggestions? Councilmember McQuaid, go ahead, please.
I don't have questions, but I do have some comments.
Okay.
Vice Mayor, I think you're on the right track. When I first looked at your report on the agenda, I was like, whoa. But as I read through it slowly and carefully, it actually does make a lot of sense. But I do have a couple of thoughts. One is we don't want to overburden the staff, because as we all know, a lot of this work will fall onto the staff members. And so thinking about how to shift it onto the advisory bodies is part of what I was trying to think about. And I also believe that the work plans aren't necessarily linear, that a lot of things can happen at the same time. And while something may not be a really high priority, there may be interest in several members of the body that really want to work on something, and that's okay too. So it's important to kind of figure out some flexibility in all of this. And I also know that the advisory bodies right now have pretty much at least have a good draft of their work plan. And I don't want to slow them down at this point by throwing a whole lot of new stuff at them and saying, redo this. So I kind of came up with a template that has sort of outline form 7 items that are very similar to what you have, but it's maybe just a little different. If you don't mind, I'm just going to read through them fairly quickly.
Please go ahead.
I think it's important to start out with the purpose of the advisory body so everybody kind of focuses in on what you're here for. And then to have a summary of the last year's work plan, including status reports, similar to what the council gets on the strategic plan report. And I was thinking it would make sense at the end of the 2-year period for the advisory body to do that work and pass it on to the new person, to the new advisory body, which would then save staff from having to do it. And it would sort of be a good exercise for the current advisory body to do that work. And I also thought they could probably at the mid-year point, maybe do a brief overview and see sort of where they are. It's kind of a check-in. Anyway, there are certainly regularly scheduled items that are going to happen every month or every quarter. Like, for example, the Albany Cares report to SEJC or the police report to transportation. So those things kind of go in the regularly scheduled item. And then there's ongoing things like tree removal and the art gallery and the film fest and things like that that happen every year that we want to have happen, and they go on the work plan, but they kind of go in a separate item, separate box. And then there could be repeat items that were on the work plan before. They're not completed, but they're still of interest. They're not the ongoing ones, but they're ones that are still of interest. And then new items, which are action items that are new to the work plan. For example, P&Z is doing the housing element this year, and PROS is doing the master plan. So those are sort of unique to this year. And then there's the future item, which is kind of what you were talking about, sort of the parking lot model with things that are important, but nobody's really into doing them right now. But they go on there in a special place so we don't lose track of them. And I think items 5 and 6, which are the repeat and the new items, they could kind of go into tiers of either required or desired. And that kind of gives a little flexibility, but it also kind of sets the tone of what's expected. So it's, like I say, it's really similar to what you have. Maybe what you have, what you have is fine. It's just a little different way to look at it.
Thank you, Councilmember McQuaid. Any other council members want to weigh in? Okay, we'll go and see if there's public comment. And it looks like there's none. All right, we'll go ahead and Vice Mayor Jordan, if you want to go ahead and.
Sure. Thank you, Councilmember McQuaid, and I appreciate your wading through my verbosity. I know I have problems in that regard. I'm a visual person actually, so I don't know if you're willing to put the template up, if it's a digital document that you've prepared and share it on the screen.
You're muted.
Email it to Ann and have her do it. It's not on the same computer I'm using, so I think that's
okay.
faster.
Okay. I mean, it sounds good to me. I didn't hear anything that seemed problematic, and I think you're right that the well, I guess the part I wasn't clear on was, does the template that you have include repeating because this is really the most important item to me, repeating verbatim the previous work plan items with some sort of indication of what got worked on and what didn't. And I'm not looking for necessarily even anything as extensive as the scoring that's done on the strategic plan. Just simply, 3 ranks: accomplished, worked on, not worked on. I mean, to me, that would be a huge improvement over what is happening now, and be very instructive in terms of helping us to understand whether the new items that are proposed are within capacity or not.
So it sounds like you just want to simplify everything. That way it's not so, broad and comprehensive, to where even if we're passing it on to the new advisory body, they'll be able to go and point out exactly what was done and what are the next steps and how do we go from. So I think Councilmember Nason had a quick question before we look at the template.
I was just going to suggest that if there's much wordsmithing to do, that maybe Vice Mayor Jordan and Councilmember McQuaid could confer between meetings.
Did you guys want to do that? Okay. Did you want to do that and bring it back with the final product?
I'm loving that. Thank you.
I'm happy to do that.
Okay.
But you have to at least see it.
Yeah, there we go. For all that work.
We'll look at it and then we'll just bring it back for the final product. But go ahead.
Oh, that's fine. I just want.
Yeah, no, that really helps me again, because as a geologist, I'm a geologist because I'm a visual person, so it sort of becomes reinforced. So now that I can see it,
okay.
Yeah, it looks great. So yes, we'll get together and bring you back
that'd be great.
A single proposal.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you both. All right, we're moving to item number 1112, request to allow installation of temporary rainbow crosswalks adjacent to the Albany Unified School District campus. We'll go ahead and get a staff recommendation or report.
Good evening, council members. Jeff Bond, Community Development Director. The action before the City Council this evening is to consider directing staff to allow the installation of temporary rainbow crosswalks adjacent to Albany Unified School District campuses. This is normally something that the City Council wouldn't get involved with, the striping of streets. Occasionally, Transportation Commission may weigh in on some of this, but this is, and the city engineer has the authority within the municipal code to make these kinds of decisions. However, this is a unique request, and because of the significance of the cause, we thought it warranted bringing it to you this evening. What the request is coming from an organization called Albany's Pride, and their stated mission is to ensure that sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression of every member of our AUSD community is valued, respected, and celebrated. And there's more information about that organization in the material that was attached to the staff report. So the request is to paint using temporary paint at the various school locations, the rainbow colors in between the regular stripes on the crosswalks. This has been done in various forms in various communities. And in this case, they may ultimately want to come back and talk to the council about a permanent installation of such crosswalk. But at the moment, their formal request is for a temporary crosswalk, a temporary painting. And if the council were to take action this evening to authorize us to proceed, we would work with the proponents to work out the details. They are proposing to install on several busy streets, so we would take care to make sure there's a good traffic management plan so that the people who are doing the work are safe and protected, and to make sure that the materials are being used are appropriate for the street, and that if they were, as they run off into the storm drain, they don't do any environmental damage to our creeks or waterways. And also work with them on any final locations. We'd like to have a little bit of flexibility to move around if, depending on the number of people that are volunteering to help, we may want to switch from one crosswalk to another. So with that, I will pause and be happy to take any questions for council members. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. We'll go ahead and bring it to the council. Councilmember McQuaid, go ahead, please.
Thank you. I think this is great. We had talked years ago about doing some kind of street painting. So maybe this is a step forward toward that. My only question I'm assuming the school district's been talked about with the school district, and they're on board.
I have asked Albany's Pride to reach out to the school district. I know they've done that. There was some feedback that it would seem like some encouraging feedback, but I think it was more kind of informal from some of the people who were reached out to. But we'll make sure that the district officially knows what's coming and doesn't have any issues with what will be installed.
Sounds great.
Any other council members? All right, we'll go ahead out to public comment. Looks like we have 3. We'll do 2 minutes, please. Go ahead, please.
Hi, Council. This is Margie again. I love this idea. I think you should make it permanent right now. I also think that when you're looking at the rainbow flag, please consider what Corey said earlier, that there's a new rainbow flag that includes black and brown markings and pink and turquoise. And so that it includes all members of our community, all genders, non-gender, everything. Please consider, making sure that that's the rainbow flag that gets painted on the sidewalk. But I love this idea. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Next, please.
Hi, thank you, Madam Mayor. This is a great idea. I mean, for so many reasons. Obviously, for people's rights and to be appreciated and to be recognized, and how transparent this is. I mean, this is on the ground for everybody to see, everybody walking across this crosswalk, everybody driving, they will see it. Also, a rainbow colored crosswalk around the schools. Oh, perfect. I've been asking that for years. It just makes it safer, and it actually slows traffic down because cars want to drive slower to take a look at the artwork. So now this is artwork. So now the Arts Commission in Albany hopefully can have some sort of say so. This is a big thing. We can do every crosswalk in Albany, some sort of color for some sort of Lives Matter, for Indigenous. All the crosswalks on Masonic, on the Ohlone Greenway, could be Ohlone colors or something. I am all for this. And Margie, you are absolutely right. We need to make this permanent paint, because if it's not permanent, it's just as good as sidewalk chalk. So let's make this permanent because it's a great idea. Way to go, Albany. You're making change, taking action in the moment, and making some positive change. Keep up the good work, everybody.
Thank you for your comment. Next, please.
Hi again, Corey Dostey. Yeah, I want to speak in favor and to say that this sort of thing is really meaningful. As a non-binary and trans and queer person, seeing this sort of thing around Oakland when I lived there previous to coming to Albany meant a lot. It is a sense of warmth and belonging and inclusion that is difficult to get outside of having an actual community. And I'm really glad that Albany Pride has organized this. It looks like they have already put forth the Progress Pride flag. I do have some minor concerns in terms of they use a pink, blue, white, brown, black, which risks blurring the white of the trans flag with skin tones of brown and black, and the white being misperceived as a skin tone in a race. This is easily fixed because in the actual trans flag, the white goes between the pink and blue. It represents transitioning and non-binary gender. So that order just would need to be fixed, and I'm sure we could work with Albany Pride on that. But Yeah, this sounds great. And I would also recommend looking into commissioning actual LGBTQIA plus community members if you're going to pay anyone to do it. It sounds like right now this is volunteer, and that's also great. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. All right, I'll bring it back to council for further discussion. Any council members? All right, let's get a motion.
I'll move.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Gary,
Abstain.
Vice Mayor Jordan,
Yes.
Councilmember McQuay,
Yes.
Councilmember Nason,
Yes.
Councilmember Tiedemann.
Yes.
All right,
Motion carries.
we'll go to item number 12, which is the council subcommittee reports. I'll start with Vice Mayor Jordan. Do you have any reports or events, meetings?
Yeah, so I attended the Programs Administration meeting of the Stop Waste Board. There were two presentations. Touch on one briefly. Waste Management has built a $160 million facility at the Davis Street area, which is where the transfer station is otherwise. This is where our solid waste goes to be sorted. This facility is the most advanced in the country. It actually sorts out combustible materials from the waste stream. So not from the compost stream, not from the recyclable stream, but from the waste stream. Does it all indoors for odor control. It's currently working one shift, specifically for Oakland's waste. It's reducing the number of trucks that go to the Altamont landfill by about 800 per year. And Waste Management was there letting it be known that a second shift is available for those jurisdictions that want to avail themselves of it. I don't know if that makes sense for Albany or with SB 1383, because for the single residence accounts, we already have green waste and compost separated out in theory. And SB 1383 requires that service to be acquired by multi-residence buildings and commercial as well. So I'm not really sure how these different facts line up, but staff presumably are thinking about that as a part of the franchise agreement. I also wanted to bring forward that I've had a couple of meetings with the school districts regarding access via various transportation modes to Ocean View Elementary School, and presented some ideas on how to facilitate their staff parking lot, staff arriving by motor vehicle, keeping those separate from and improving the access for students who are riding by sidewalk and by rolling either on a scooter or on a bike. The mayor participated in the first of those, which was at the site. We certainly thank the school district for being willing to have these discussions. The school district, through its construction manager, has hired an engineering firm to take these ideas and draw them up. So it is in progress. And that's my report. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Vice Mayor. I'll go to Councilmember McQuay. Do you have any meetings, events, reports you'd like to share with us?
Sure. As always, the webinars, we had a Housing Authority board meeting. We had everyone home leadership board meeting. I attended a 2-day economic summit by the Green Lining Institute, which focused on racial equity, which was really interesting. And I attended the APOA Affordable Housing Kickoff and another APOA event, which is East Bay Housing Organization.
Thank you. Councilmember Nason.
Yes, I attended with Councilmember Tiedemann. We held a subcommittee meeting with the Albany staff to discuss the University of California's plans here, and we're arranging a meeting to follow up on that discussion. I attended the Planning, Policy, and Legislation Committee meeting of the Alameda County Transportation Commission. There was nothing that was Albany specific, but interesting developments in the legislature. I also attended we all attended the closed session on the Albany Hill Cross. I attended the interagency environmental stakeholder webinar on the governor's California comeback plan, as well as a conference call Zoom on COVID. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And Councilmember Tino?
Besides the subcommittee meeting, which we'll have more to follow up on soon, hopefully, I attended a special marketing, regulatory, and legislative committee for East Bay Community Energy, where we were talking about mainly the marketing of EBC and how that body is switching from aiming to retain its existing customers to recruit more customers, and how we can do that and what organizations we can partner with. The main idea being the Oakland Roots soccer team, which is very exciting, and how board members of the EBCE can be helpful by talking to their community about East Bay Community Energy. So anyone in the audience, if you have issues or questions about how your power bill is changing, which you've probably gotten some letters about recently, feel free to email me and I will be happy to talk about it.
I will be emailing you tonight. No. All right, we'll go to my meetings. I went to the mayor's conference and former Mayor Michael Tubbs was in attendance. He spoke about the guarantee income monies that most of the cities are engaging in. He spoke in great detail about our governor's plan and the money that is being set forth to move our cities forward. So it was very informative. He gave a lot of detailed information, and I believe some of our cities will be jumping on the bandwagon. I know we already have Mayor Libby Schaaf. She invited Mayor Tubbs and they spoke about this. So I did receive a link from the former mayor, and I can forward that as well if you would like to read what he has to say about that. So I will send that. Okay. All right. We will go to, let's make sure there's no comments. Okay, I'm seeing none. Let's go to item number 13, any future agenda items. I'll start with Councilmember Thielman. No? Councilmember Nason? Vice Mayor Jordan?
No, thanks.
And Councilmember McQuaid?
Nope.
Okay. All right, so we'll go to item number 14, which is announcements of the city meetings and events. I want everyone to govern them themselves. Tomorrow we will have our community task force meeting. This will be the first one. So you definitely want to engage in that at 7 p.m. Before we end, I would like to hand the mic over to Councilmember McQuaid and Vice Mayor Jordan. Vice Mayor Jordan, why don't you go ahead and start, and then Councilmember McQuaid will go ahead and give her information.
Okay, I just wanted to announce that our mayor is going to be speaking at the groundbreaking of the Gilman Interchange project. Yes. That's you on 1 p.m. on Thursday. It'll be by Zoom, but she's going to be live unlike some of the other speakers. I don't have the link right in front of me, but it's available from the Alameda County Transportation Commission, or if you just search on Gilman groundbreaking, I imagine it will come up. So thanks for doing that for us, Mayor.
Thank you for calling me out, Vice Mayor Jordan. Councilmember McQuaid, go ahead, please.
On a little more somber note, longtime Albany resident Brian Smith, son of Rich and Rita Smith, passed away on April 7th. Brian touched the lives of all who met him, and he lit up a room with his infectious smile and loving heart. During his life, he excelled in swimming, basketball, and bowling. He loved singing and dancing to his favorite songs. His heart was big, and he loved everyone he met, and they loved him back. He was heaven's very special child, and I personally feel honored to have known him, and he truly will be missed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember McQuaid. We'll take a moment of silence just to remember Mr. Smith and his life here and contributions on this earth. All right, if no other council members have anything to say, I want to thank Vice Mayor Jordan Councilmember Nason, Councilmember McQuaid, Councilmember Tiedemann, City Manager, and City Attorney and staff for a wonderful meeting this evening. It was long, but we got through it, and I'm letting you out. You're at 8:33. Can you believe that? So thank you so much for your efforts and moving things forward, and we will see you in a couple of weeks. I hope you have a good evening. Meeting adjourned.